The Canal Winchester Local School District Board of Education. We're going to start out with our opening items. Number one is going to be President Pro Tem. So I'm going to need a motion to appoint a President Pro Tem.
I move to appoint Kevin Butler as Board President Pro Temp to service the October 18, 2021 board meeting.
Second. Well,
That will actually-
the rest of the year.
No, we're going to do that a little bit later on.
Much later?
Yep,
Okay.
so this is just the start to me.
Oh.
No, and it's this side and on this side,
Okay, awesome.
quite a bit.
Thank you. All right. So I have a motion and a second. So Mr. Roberts, if you would call the roll.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler? Yes. Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Berger?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. So we're going to call to order. So the meeting's going to be called to order at 7:01 p.m. And Mr. Roberts, would you call the roll?
Mr. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Berger?
Present.
Mr. Metzler? Here. Mrs. Talley?
Here.
Motion passes 4-0. Excuse me. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and moving on to item number 5, which is going to be election of officers for the rest of the 2021 year. Calendar year. 2021 fiscal year. So I need a motion to appoint a board president.
Make a motion for Kevin Butler as board president for the remainder of the calendar year.
Second.
And I'm going to motion to appoint Mr. Matthew Kruger as vice president for the remainder of the 2021 calendar year.
Second that.
All right, so if we have a motion and a second, Mr. Roberts, if you call the roll.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler? Yes. Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to number 6, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay. And then moving on to 7, so the approval of the agenda. So I'm going to need a motion to approve the agenda as presented,
So move.
and I'll second that. Okay. And Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Kruger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 4-0. And moving on to presentation. So our first presentation this evening is from middle school, and we have Mrs. Kelly Zivchek, the principal, here this evening.
Testing. Here. All right, good evening, board members, Mr. Sattler, Mrs. Hunt, and everyone else in the guest. I'm Mrs. Zipchek, the principal at Canal Winchester Middle School. So tonight I would like to present a new course offering at the middle school. Last year at Canal Winchester Middle School, we had the opportunity to really evaluate and reflect on our related arts course offerings to determine if they met the needs of our middle school students. To gather information last year, we listened to all staff, we listened to our students, we surveyed them, and to make sure that we empowered all of our students for success. So tonight, Mr. Paulsgrove, Mrs. Eastep, and I would like to tell you about one of our new courses offered at the middle school that our students, our 7th grade students going into 8th grade last year had the option of requesting this course. The new course offering is called Careers in Canal.
I'm one of the assistant principals, and this is Mrs. Heather Eastep. She's our family and consumer science teacher. So this is basically designed for 8th graders going into the workforce as early as the summer between their 8th grade and freshman year. And if you look up here, we're really focusing on the areas of how do they get the job. Now that you have your job, how are you going to keep it? And how do you move up? One of the things we wanted to focus on are the jobs here in Canal Winchester surrounding area that they can gain as an entry-level position and then continuously move their way up with responsibility, wages, as they get into high school, as they graduate, choose one of the 3 E's, and potentially into college as well. So the areas we kind of focused in on Canal Winchester, looking at where our students currently work in the environments. And the first one was obviously food service, your McDonald's, your Kingies, your Shades, your Burger Kings, places like that, were a high percentage. Traditionally throughout the country, 1 out of every 4 people has worked in a McDonald's nationwide. So it just goes to tell you the amount in food service oriented industry. Customer service, whether it be a shopping place, anything like that. Just really talking about the skills they're going to learn, opportunities they're going to have. Hospitality and tourism has become a big one around here with Canal Winchester, with the shops in downtown, Brewdog, some of the other events we're bringing on. How do they go about 2 new hotels? So how do they go about doing that? What are the jobs, opportunities? Where can they lead? And then finally, obviously, the logistics and skilled trades, knowing, you know, can I become a forklift operator? I can work in docks. I can drive a truck with a Class A CDL. So all of these opportunities that are just here in Canal Winchester that are open to our kids as early as 14, some not till they're 18, but as early as 14, we wanted our kids to be prepared to meet the workforce and what the workforce is looking for. So Mrs. Eastep did a great job of designing a curriculum that discuss how you can attain a job as a teenager, can lead to future options. Obviously, our 3 E's are prevalent: enroll, enlist, and employ. And we want to continue to push that so they understand, hey, I can start at McDonald's at 15, but maybe I get into their management program at 18. Maybe they're helping me pay for college. Maybe I become a senior VP or something by the time they're older. But I started at the ground level, and I continuously worked my way up. We don't have to, you know, they don't have to go all over the place. There's great opportunities here in our local community. And then the other thing, obviously, we want to push hard is our portrait of a graduate, being respectful citizens, problem solvers, collaborators, communications, all things that the current employers are looking for in our young people. So we wanted to make sure we hit those as well. And you can see some of the concepts that Mrs. Eastep is really talking about with our kids: financial institutions, paycheck, the importance of net versus gross, deductions, savings and checking accounts. One of the things we talked about is, you know, a lot of stuff is done digitally now. How many kids know how to open up a bank account and get a debit card? Because, you know, a lot of places don't take cash right now. So those kind of things are things that Mrs. Eastep is really teaching and going forward: loans, investing, and savings. So it all starts at an early age, and that's what we're trying to promote. And then Mrs. Zivchak's going to talk about the survey students here.
So of course, since this is a new course, one of the first things we wanted to do is get student feedback, because there are stakeholders in our related arts classes. So students were surveyed on October 1st and asked to share their thoughts about our careers in Canal class. And one of the first questions was, why were you interested in taking this careers class as an 8th grader? So there's a lot of responses there, but I just wanted to highlight a few of them. One of the responses was to learn about careers in Canal and get ready for the real world, because I thought it could help me as I'm becoming old enough to start doing jobs, because it teaches me to be more successful in life. I wanted to learn more about careers in general and learning necessary skills like how to apply for jobs, how to make resumes, and it seemed like a definite plus, so I decided I wanted to take this class. The next question was, what information have you learned so far that will help you as a teenage worker? How to make money. I have learned skills where I can work and what I need to do to get a job. How to create a resume and what skills to have to succeed in certain industries. And the next question, what are 2 or 3 topics, concepts, or types of information you would like to learn about that are related to teens and work? Common interview questions, how to be a good worker, summer jobs you can do when you are young, how to do good in interviews, how to amaze the person who is interviewing you, and how to get extra money in your shifts, and how to make sure you can balance school and work. And the last question we asked them was, what have you learned so far in our 6 weeks together about work and teenage employment that you feel has been important, and why do you feel this way? I learned about how to apply for jobs, and it's very important because other teens don't have a chance to learn. I feel this is why I think this is a good class to have in our life and help better ourselves in the future. It gave me a new look on teenage workers when I see them working at a grocery store or a fast food place, because I know now that they had to write a good resume and have good work and academic experience to get where they might be now. And Mrs. Eastep's reflections. Do you want me to read it for you, Mrs. Eastep?
Teaching careers in Canal has been a great opportunity for my students to make many real-world connections. They are truly interested in knowing how to become successful in their life and to embrace our daily lessons. They are engaged because the knowledge that they are learning is applicable to their current lives. They ask many great questions during our discussions and lessons to further seek knowledge about becoming a teenage employee, as well as being prepared and knowledgeable and eager to join the workforce.
The last thing I just want to say real quick is, Mrs. East, the one thing I forgot is she's also talking about like skills to go through, how to look people in the eye, the skills that you would need in a job interview, those interpersonal skills that so many kids lack because of the devices, how to talk to people, how to communicate is another piece that she's doing well, which I think is so important for today. So, any questions from any of the board members or anybody?
I may have missed this up front, but this is, every eighth grader is going through this, or they're selecting it, or how many kids do we have in the program?
100 total, probably.
Right now, there's about 60 in this semester, so there'll probably be about 120.
Okay.
There's me and lots of eighth graders. So we,
But it is an elective that they're
Right.
choosing to get into. Okay.
So we reconfigured how we did related arts this year. So for sixth graders coming in, they have all 9 weeks courses, so it's more exploratory. As they move to seventh and eighth grade, they now have more choice. So the sixth grade year gives them the opportunity to kind of explore everything we offer, see what their niche is and what interests them, and then going into seventh and eighth grade, they now can request.
And kind of introduced it when they got to pick classes last spring. And once we kind of talked to kids about it, we had more than requests than we could meet, honestly. In this throughout the year, just because of the numbers, we can't offer it to everybody, but the response we've gotten is very good so far, and we're encouraged by what we're seeing.
So the next stage is getting another teacher and involved in it. There we go.
Yes. Any other questions we can answer? We appreciate the board's time and support. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job, guys. All right, we're going to move on to our second presentation. So we have the CWEA here this evening.
Should I follow what they did? Stand over here? I like that. Okay, okay. Hi, I'm Amy Lee. I teach at the high school, and I have a little bit to share from each building. That's kind of cool that's going on. Abby Van Allen's preschool class completed a Three Little Pig mini unit project with the help of Alex Goff. She's a speech and language pathologist. They collaborated to make a mini unit. She pulled students individually to work on speech and language goals. But they read the story, they had scenes, characters, props to go along with it. They did a STEM experiment where the students had to create a house for their little pig out of dots and toothpicks. And then the big bad wolf, which was a hairdryer, tried to blow it over. They used props and things to retell the story and work on sequencing, and they did some crafts to go along with that. In kindergarten, they finished up their ABC boot camp. They did their first Wonders assessment, and it took a long time, but they finally were able to get students to circle just one answer. They were excited about that. They're also piloting a new math series, working on sorting objects. In the Miss Amy's class, the second year of Discover Dairy, they were each assigned a farm and a calf to follow during the school year. They're learning about the dairy process. And this year they're working with a farm in Sugar Creek, Ohio, that has about 1,700 milking cows and a 2,400-acre farm. They are assigned a cow named Dolly, and they are following that cow throughout the year. Winchester Trail, students are working with Design Time using code.org. They're learning the importance of making strong passwords and only sharing them with parents and guardians. They're identifying bugs in the codes that they create and working to debug other programs, and they've developed a simple interactive game using Star Wars characters. And last but not least, at the high school, we have a Canal lunch program that's partnered up with Miss Rummery and Miss Sims classes. They've had 2 successful lunches, soup, salad, dessert, to 30 staff members. The students prepare the menu, they do the grocery shopping, the cooking, baking, food prep, and they deliver the food. the students and the staff love and appreciate that. That's a little bit from each building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to presentation number 3, which is our Eagle Scout project update. And Danny Myers, is he here?
So I'm just back here to give a little update on how my Eagle project went. I finished a couple months ago, and it took a bit of time because we ran into some errors, but it finished pretty well, and it looks pretty nice in the Indian Trail / Winchester Trail area.
What errors did you run into that you had to overcome?
So we had a setting thing where we would screw the screw in and it would pop out. Those didn't work as well as we thought they would, and they just kept breaking. So instead of using those, we just drilled like thinner holes and then just put normal screws into them to keep it there.
Okay. So it didn't come out as,
No, it actually worked instead of breaking.
but it probably came out better reworking
Yeah.
it than, yeah. Great.
You did a good job. I know some people may have missed your first presentation, just so some people
Yeah.
can't see the picture, just let them know what exactly was your project, because it looks like it came out really good.
My project was to add like a boardwalk / story walk to the Indian Trail / Winchester Trail woods. That way kids could come out of the classrooms and like do a adventure type thing where they would read basically a picture book and then have like a question at the end
Awesome.
that they would have to answer.
Yeah, I was over there and I saw kind of the finishing touch of it, and it was really nice. I just thought that might be nice to point out to people at home, because it was really an awesome project, and we always love the Eagle Scout project. You guys have done a great job in the district, adding to what we already have going on here, so we really appreciate it. So I just wanted to make sure you mentioned that to people at home so
Yeah.
they knew what you were working on. So it's very awesome. Yeah.
Yes, and the
Danny,
students appreciate it as well.
Yep.
I hear a lot of excitement from the students there about
That's
it.
good.
Mhm.
Is it always the same story, or the teachers have the ability to change? the book?
I worked with Miss Dickinson, the librarian, and she can like change it at will
Okay.
whenever she like wants to. So she could do like winter-ish books in winter or fall, any type of book she would want.
Awesome.
Coordinating with the teachers, like across different subject areas.
Awesome. Wonderful.
That's such a great idea. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you guys for letting me come back. Glad you all let me do this for the kids.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Danny.
Good job, buddy. All right, we're gonna move on to our 4th presentation, which is Hellas Constructions here this evening.
You allowed to open up and start looking at it?
If you want to.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
No, just leave one extra. Okay. Or two extra.
Here's the hard drive.
Yep.
If you need it.
Okay.
Or digital copy.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is William Batt with Hellas Construction. I'm a business development manager, and I cover the Midwest region for Hellas Construction. We're a sports construction company. Headquartered at our office, have a local office here in Youngstown, Ohio. I am here today to just go over through the turf and track project for Canal Winchester High School and all the student athletes and community members that may use those facilities. For the turf portion, in the booklets I handed out, it goes through product, past projects we've done, product recommendations. It dives into a little bit about Hellas Construction, who we are as a company. We're the nation's largest sports construction company, doing over 425 turf fields this past year and 250 tracks. So We're well versed in the sports construction, and we're very honored to partner with Canal Winchester. That when you dive through the booklets, it goes through the first few pages are maps and more information about us, what schools we've completed projects with, where we have 13 satellite offices, and so we feel very local when it comes to that, not being all the way from Texas and whatnot, but we still have that Ohio connection. I'm from Ohio, so we like to tend towards our Ohio schools now that we officially have a lot of presence in Ohio, and it's only growing from here. We have in their renderings, product recommendations, what turf y'all have selected for the project and what track you selected. It also goes through where our plants are across the country or across the United States. We have 3 of them in the United States. Alabama, Dalton, Georgia, and Texas are where our plants are located, where we manufacture all of our products for the sports construction needs. And then it dives into the rendering that we have provided for everyone. It has kept Weiser Field. Am I saying that correct? It's kept Weiser Field, and it dives into what the layout of the field will be and what the track will look like as well.
Where is that in here?
It's one of the last pages.
Page 26 in your book. And we're going to bring it up on this. I sent it to your email. Yeah, the last one. There's a new one that I just sent to you.
And I'll make sure that I get a contact list from everyone in our company that will be involved in the project with you guys, including I have my business cards with my cell phone number. So if you guys have any questions throughout the project, you obviously have my uninvited attention. Whenever you need me, text me, call me, email me, whatever may come up. And I'll be throughout the project. I'll be on site along with the superintendent of Hellas Construction. We don't subcontract anything out. We're a one-stop shop when it comes to sports construction. So everything you will see will be a Hellas employee, Hellas equipment, and Hellas product to make it beneficial for y'all, so you only have one finger to point at, which is me. Do you have any questions regarding the project that I could answer for you at this time?
I know Mr. Saul is pulling up something for us. So I think my question is obviously sort of the time frame and just kind of, I know some people at home are looking at some of these digital images, but just kind of walk people through what the project is going to entail, because I think some people at home are like, they're interested in it, but I'm sure maybe you explain it to us and kind of give us a little clarification.
Yes, sir. So we recycle all of the existing turf that will be removed from the field currently, so that's all recycled. And if the community or yourselves want to keep it, let us know while we're on site, and we'll cut up those pieces and leave them behind. If some community members want them, whatever the case may be. So those, if you choose so, those will be available. The field layout itself, it has the Canal in one end zone in Winchester and the other, with the Canal logos to kind of fill that left end zone, because Canal is obviously a little bit smaller than Winchester. Just kind of fill it out. And then we also went with the CW logo with the circle and then the feather off of the circle for the logo. It's going to have alternating panels, so dark green, light green, which really gives it that nice effect under the lights, and we de-shine all of our products, which will really look good under lights, and so it won't look slippery and wet while the athletes and the community are on it and using it. So we'll do all of that demoing first, and then we'll move over to demoing the track. And then once we demo both, we'll start with the field, so we're not driving all over the brand new track.
And then what's the time frame on the project? I know we're going to be looking at approving it this evening, but just for those people who maybe aren't here, when are we looking at the timeline on the project?
Yes, sir. So as of right now, my understanding is we're going to start June 1st and be completed by August 1st. So we have pretty much a 2-month window to knock it all out, which we just completed Hilliard Bradley this past summer/fall, and we hit that 2-month window with the same exact project. Resurface of turf and resurfacing of the track. So
hopefully by kickoff next football season, we'll be ready to go.
Hopefully. I know I'm from Ohio, but the to say we don't miss kickoff.
Okay, there we go. Awesome. Well, it looks like a wonderful project, and I know, don't quote me on this, but how old was the field and the turf that we have right now? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Either year 11 or 12 for the field.
Yeah, so I mean, it was already past its life expectancy, so I know we're looking forward to bringing in something new, and obviously, we're gonna try and bring in some of those extra bells and whistles and make sure we're being as safe as possible for our athletes.
Yes, sir. So, just for everyone's knowledge, it does have standard 8-year warranty, which is standard across the industry, but we have a 2-year longer life expectancy in our turf on average against all of our competitors. So you're gonna get a few extra years out of this than what you just previously did. So you'll be well served for the next 12, 14 years.
Is the track going to be black, or currently it's like the orange color, it's going to be black?
Yes, sir. So we are going to transition that into a black track.
Will the field be crowned, or will it be flat?
So the field that you have currently, the old way in making those synthetic turf fields back in the day when you first did the project, they did come with the crown, so we'll regrade that and remove a little bit of the crown with still keeping the current drainage that you currently have, and then it'll have a little bit of a crown, not as bad as it does now.
Okay.
The drainage under the field is adequate for removing that crown.
Does the black track wear better than the red? I mean, does the sun not eat it up as bad, or?
Yeah, so the thing with the red tracks versus black tracks, they're both standard in pricing, so they're equal in pricing. Red tracks, you can see dirt a lot more, and they get dirty more often because you can see it often, and with the black track, you're not really going to notice that dirt to where it's going to look clean for a long time. Okay. And you have the track that you have chosen is a track that will not need to be ripped up for a couple resurfaces. You can build on top of it, which is a cost-effective for the district moving forward.
Excellent.
Very nice.
Wonderful.
You guarantee us a 3-point advantage in every game?
I can try. Yeah, I can give you that.
All right. Does anybody have any other additional questions? Well, thank you for coming and sharing and presenting to us this evening.
Awesome. Thank you again for taking some time this evening and looking forward to getting this project underway.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move on to section C.
Thanks, William. Good job.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Yep, thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to section C, which is discussion. So we have the mask policy is something we're going to be discussing this evening. So I'm just going to open up the floor because obviously this is a discussion. So so just moving forward, like I said, I know this was obviously going to continue to be a topic that is going to continue to be under discussion. So we wanted to open up this evening and kind of start a discussion on it, obviously, because we know that we've had some more attendance, and this has been definitely one of those hot topics more recently. So I'm just going to open the floor up for the other board members to kind of start to discuss what our past policy is going to be moving forward.
Jim, can you walk through some of the numbers that we've had
The COVID numbers.
recently?
Yes.
To start the discussion off so we can
And if you could go
have
to
a
the
point of
graph.
reference.
So this is week by week from the first week of school. Actually, that's started on that Monday, the 23rd of August through last week. Ended on with the 10-11. And as you can see, our COVID numbers, student COVID numbers, which are on
Jim,
the left
are you
side.
on mic? I can't hear you.
You can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. The student COVID numbers are on the right-hand side with the left-hand side with the close contact. And as you can tell from the very first start of school, our numbers were a little high of 24, 41, 32, but then we started to go down even before we had the mask policy in place of 21, 13, 8, 13, and then 9, 3 the last week. And even our close contact numbers, of course, have gone down with less kids coming in, getting COVID, so our close contact numbers are going down over the last couple weeks also. So that's a positive trend for us moving forward. Right now, we had a total of 155 student COVID cases with 707 students out for close contact. Our staff has been very minimal of 22 for the entire year and only 5 close contact moving forward from there. And so there's 2 graphs over on the left side. The right side is student COVID and close contact. The blue numbers are pre-mask, and then I believe that's orange. Is during our mask mandate that we had in place. And as you can see, our numbers are trending down for our students and for our staff. Bridget, if you'd like to go up a little bit and show the staff. And it's the same thing. We're seeing the trend downwards, but mostly with our student cases, which is good for us. So that's where we stand today. Questions?
So, I guess, well, one question, not question, I should say, more of a statement is, I do know that the close contacts, that was obviously a concern for me. So the exclusion numbers and making sure we're keeping the kids in the classroom, so that number is is trending downward. So, you know, I know that this was obviously something that some parents agree with, some parents didn't. I would say that that has been a positive trend. And obviously, for me, one of the things that's moving forward is that we continue to see that trend. So I know we're having a discussion about what the policy is going to look like moving forward, but keeping kids in the classroom, again, is going to be my primary focus. And it looks like this is having some of, and I'm not going to say it's all tied into masks, but however, I do think it's a positive trend that we're seeing our numbers of close contacts go down, and that's something that I would like to see continue moving forward, because again, I know it's important to keep kids in the classroom. So, you know, whatever our strategy is going to be, I think that's got to be something.
Some of
to
those
take into
close
account.
contacts happen during lunchtime, so whether we're in mask policy or not,
Yeah.
just that we're just in close contact during that time, and so some of those numbers are happening during that time. So really, when it comes to wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, lunchtime is one of those that it doesn't make a difference.
Okay. Awesome.
I just want to say that I'm encouraged by our current trend of positive student cases going down. And I would like to say that I feel that the masks are attributing to that. Alone, there, you know, that's up for discussion, but I do feel like masks are contributing to our lower numbers that we're seeing. And with 3 weeks of data, I just want to say that even though the choice to mandate masks may not be favorable for everyone, it is very important that we keep our children's health at the forefront, and that we are focused on trying to keep our children in school without unnecessary exclusions. There has been scientific studies, research that the Ohio Department of Health and so forth have put out that does say there's a correlation between mask wearing with lower incidences of COVID spread. So I just want to say that I just want us to still stay vigilant, still do what we feel is necessary, even though it may not be favorable for everyone. However, I do look forward to establishing more of a system, or we can look at metrics as far as a path forward, so that everyone can be clear on the masking policy and why the district may choose to require it versus make it highly recommended. I feel like that's important for us to have that discussion, so that everyone know where we're going. But I am encouraged by what I'm seeing so far. I do for sure would like to see more data before there's any recommendation made to change what we're currently doing. I would like to continue to see more data.
Jim, I know you have talked with your staff, and I know Monica just said she wants to see more data on that. With the administrators and your folks, have you come up with recommendations that we might be able to look at as a board to look at different options and different ways to kind of come in and out of it depending on the caseloads? Is that something, I mean, I'm open to at least having a conversation and looking at that, and maybe potentially looking, if there's no move on that, to look at if there's different buildings that we might be able to look at making it strongly recommended rather than mandating. I mean, I like to have those discussions with the board with Jim's assistance in some of their findings behind the scenes that we might not be aware of.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Kruger. And yes, we have looked into this quite extensively. There's not a whole lot of schools that are doing some type of metric out there, but we did find a couple that we looked at and we said this could be something that we could model ourselves afterwards. So we came up with the plan, with a draft plan. I want to emphasize that, a draft plan for what some type of metric could look like as we move forward. Mrs. Kruger, can you bring that up, please? So what we came up with is basically a metric that's based off a certain percentage of what we would consider to be low, moderate, or high. And it's based off our student population. And right now, as of the August 7th enrollment numbers, we have 3,809 students. Those are kids that are in our building. So it doesn't include our JVS kids because they go out to the career centers, but kids that are in the building. And basically, modeling after what some other school districts do. There's 2 in Ohio and there's 2 some other place. They looked at it, okay, if your district is less than a certain percentage that over a 4-week period or a 2-week period, then you would stay in mass recommended. If it goes over that certain percentage, then you would go to mass required. And so what we came up with, if you look at the low to moderate level, we're saying that if we're somewhere between 0.5%, 5% and 0.75% over a 4-week period, then we'll stay mass recommended. So that would start from the very first Monday of the month and go to the last Friday of the month. If we are greater than 0.5% or 0.75, and we can discuss what that number, and it could be different, that this is just what I'm showing you, over a 4-week period, then the district goes into a mass recommended, or excuse me, mass required. And then what we did from there is we know that if we're in mass recommended, we have seen that some buildings might have higher cases. So what we said is if we're in mass recommended throughout the district for that 4-week period of time, if a building at some time goes over 1% or 1.2% or stays less than 1% or 1.2%, then we're okay. If we go over it, then that building alone, not the entire district, would go into a mask mandate for a 2-week period of time. And so this metric is kind of put together just to give everyone an idea of, okay, look, there's all sides to this, whether people want the mask, people don't want the mask. We're seeing our numbers drop. We're seeing the numbers drop in our communities. They're saying that the surge that we're seeing is over, but we still have a ways to go. However, what we're seeing here in Canal Winchester schools alone, our numbers are dropping very fast. And that's good. Whether it's attributed to the mask or not, they're still going down. So let's put a metric in place that will sit there and say we're going to be mask recommended if we stay within this certain percentage, or we're mask required. And just for, we can look at it, if we started back from October 3rd, which is a Monday, we go through the end of the month, which I believe is the 29th of October. We would do a 4-week total. If it was less than 0.5 or 0.75, which is actually 20 students, where I believe 28 students on an average, then we'll go to mass recommended. If we're over, then we stay for another 4 weeks in mass required. But at least everyone will be able to sit there and say, okay, we know where we stand moving forward, and that there could be an end in sight. Now, we're still going to try to social distance as best as we can. We're going to hand sanitize as best as we can. We're still going to encourage people to wear masks because we know wearing masks is going to keep more kids in school from the exclusion point of view, not necessarily from contacting COVID. Because when you get COVID, we don't know if it came from school, if it came from outside, because our community is not masked up. And so it's hard to tell where kids are contacting COVID from. So the whole goal is to try to give people, all of us, some options to sit there and say, we know where we're standing moving forward. It's going to be this level or this level. And at the end of the month, we'll put it out there. We're talking about using green for go, which means we're in mass recommended, or red for we're in mass required.
I know one of the big things, feedback we got, because we got a lot of it, it was definitely parents looking for some type of kind of concrete plan. So, I'm open to the idea of using a metric. I just want to make sure that whatever we decide to do, that it's not something that's rushed. Because I think that might be one of the concerns on the people who think the policy is working, that we rush out of it too soon. So whatever decision we decide to come to this evening, or if we decide to vote on it or not, I just want to make sure that we're giving ourselves enough time to collect some data to make sure that like you said, Mr. Sotler, over the last few weeks, we are seeing a trend in a good direction, but I just want to make sure that we can sustain that, so then that way we don't have to put this back in too soon if we decide to come out of it, or vice versa. So whatever we decide to do, I just want to make sure that we get enough data to make sure that whatever decision we're making is based on a or I should say a negative trend as far as the numbers going down. So then that way, if we do decide to go to a masking optional policy, because eventually I would imagine at some point we're going to get to that point, we need to make sure that we can stay there. So that's one of my big concerns, is that if we rush too soon, I don't want parents to get happy about it, and then 2 weeks later we see a big spread again, it's got to come back. So whatever decision we make, it's got to be something that we can sustain. So I think that's important for parents to understand that. I understand that there's definitely a lot of discussion on this issue, but whatever we decide to do, whether we go back to making it recommended or if we make it required, whatever period of time that's going to be, that once we get through that period of time, that we can stay in that recommended, because it seems like a lot of parents want to have that option back. So to be able to get there, I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, so that way we can stay there.
Well, this puts a lot of responsibility back on our kids and families too. So, if we want to stay mask recommended, then, we need to do our part too, our due diligence when you come into school. So maybe more kids will continue to wear masks, but at the same time, there's that option that I know our family and our communities really would like to have back. So if we're within those numbers, that range of 0.5%, which is about 20 kids, and 0.753, which is about 28 kids on average per month, I feel very comfortable saying we're doing a good job right there, which is also going to keep our close contacts down too. So anything over that, we sit there and say, we know we see some spread starting to happen. Let's take a step back, go on a mask for a few more weeks, get it down, and then go through it, and then start it over again.
Jim, where'd you come up with those numbers? The 0.5, 0.75, where'd you guys?
We just took the average of the weeks together, so there's no time frame. People have used 1%. I've not seen anything over 1%. It's either 1% of your total population or less. Now, these are students.
Okay.
These are students.
So these are our numbers. These are Canal Winchester numbers.
Correct.
We're probably not going to, and again, I know you talk to ODH on a weekly basis. We're probably not going to see any let up with busing, correct?
Correct.
With masking. That's going to be a standard that we probably should get used to.
Yes.
I don't like it, but I can live with it on the bus.
And that's coming from the CDC too. And some people say they don't have authority over this, or how the law is written. They actually can include school transportation in that order.
Okay.
And so it does affect us.
So those are coming from like federal guidelines and.
Correct. We didn't make them up. Franklin County didn't make them up. That's coming from the CDC.
Okay. I know that's just to be clear, because I know for some of these issues, we have control over that as a local school district, but the transportation piece is something that actually is a law that's been put in place, and it's kind of above our pay grade, I guess is a good way to say it. Okay.
As far as exclusions are coming, is that something that is being redirected or relooked at, or is that another standard that we're just going to have to live with?
I believe it is going to, there's going to be
The
some
definitions
change.
of it, and
Yeah,
that.
there's going to be some change coming. We already have House Bill 244 that came in, was in effect last Wednesday, I believe, where we can't discriminate against unvaccinated kids. So there's no longer, hey, if you're vaccinated, you just get a freebie. So now it's going to be open for everyone. But we're hearing there might be other changes coming too, so I'm just waiting to hear from either Franklin County Public Health or Ohio Department of Health, which they said they were going to come out with information, and I haven't heard anything yet. The word on the street is everyone's waiting until after the elections to make any decisions. It doesn't do us any good, but our numbers are coming down, which is good, which is a good thing. So.
Now, Mr. Sotler, are the local health officials still meeting with the superintendents like regularly?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yep, we meet once a week. It's been once every other week for the last, but yes, we are meeting at least twice a month. We meet Franklin County Department of Health, the City of Columbus, and Ohio Department of Health has people on there representing them at times. But we work through the ESC of Central Ohio, who has direct connections with the governor's office, with the Ohio Department of Health. So
So when we look at this information, like and this is obviously just a draft, you said this is gonna start on the first Monday and it'll go for a 4-week period, or will it cover the entire month, just depending on what the situation is?
Yeah, so the data, so going back, if we said that we're gonna start this in October, so from October 3rd, which was the first Monday of the month, to the last Friday of the month, what I believe is October 29th. So we'll look at that, take a 4-week average. If we're below 0.5, 0.7%, whatever number, then starting November 1st, I believe, yeah. November 1st, we'll be in one of those categories. So we'll either be in mask recommended or we'll be in mask required for a 4-week period of time. If we're in mask recommended and we see a building going over one of our levels, then we'll put them, just that building alone, in a mask required for a 2-week period of time. And a 2-week period of time, because you're quarantined, where your exclusion's 14 days, we're 10 school days, so they recommended at least, that just 2-week period of time to calm that building down. Okay, but everyone else would still be, as long as their numbers are good, would still be within that model that we're in, the track that we're on.
If we're able to adopt something like this, I want to make sure that the families, I've had conversations with Kevin, with John, with Monica, and everyone's had inter-office or 2 one-on-one conversations with everybody else. And I think what I think I remember Kevin and I having a conversation about was the exclusions. And the masks, I think, are kind of a standard. If you don't want to be excluded from school, you put a mask on.
Correct.
If we're in and that's nothing to do with any of us here. That's what's been handed down as we just discussed.
So,
that if we were in a mask recommendation and your child is exposed without a mask, we have to follow that exclusion. So I think before we were having some folks pretty upset with our staff, I think unnecessarily, because we're following the guidelines that were given to us. It's not something that we all voted on here. So if we do the mask recommended and there is exposure, the best way to make sure your child is not excluded is if they have a mask. So if you choose not to have a mask and you come in contact, you have to be excluded then. And I think that needs to be pretty clear, because I'm hoping we get to that, to a resolution here that we can get back to a recommendation. But given the recommendation, I think the onus, like you said, is now pretty much back on the family to say, hey, if your child is not masked, we have to follow those rules. The nurses and the aides have to do that.
And there could be some change coming to that. And so I'm just waiting on guidance.
Which
and so,
hopefully positive change.
Positive change for that. But don't have all the information just yet. Working on that. I know Franklin County has put out some information, but it really doesn't say a whole lot, to be totally honest with you. In regards to that, we just can't discriminate between a vaccinated person and an unvaccinated person. And really, you're talking our 12 to 18-year-olds in there. And really, it comes down to the FDA approved, and I think Pfizer is the only one. So we don't even have that information either, so we can't tell. Most of this stuff's going to have to fall back on the county health, because it's not our responsibility as a school district. I don't know who's vaccinated. I can ask you, but you don't have to tell me, but I can't discriminate between whether you're vaccinated or not, or which one you have. So they, health departments have put a lot of responsibilities on school districts that they should never have done. And so it's taken away from educational opportunities for our kids. It's put stress on communities, and understand some of why they did it, because they couldn't handle the manpower. Franklin County is the largest county in the state of Ohio. We have 4 of the largest school districts in the state, and so they just didn't have the manpower. But we can't keep doing this. It's burning my health clinic staff out. with the amount of contact tracing that they were doing on top of their regular caseloads during the day. And so we have to find a better way for the close contacts. Number one goal is kids need to be in school. Masked or unmasked, they need to be in school, period. That is the best way, the only way that we're going to be able to empower them for success, the only way that we can meet a portrait of the graduate and give them those experiences that we need. For 18 months, we've either been in school or we've been on a hybrid model. And we're seeing the effects of it, not just here in Canal, Winchester, but everywhere. Our kids need to be in school.
I agree. And then, like Mr. Kruger was saying, the exclusion thing, that was one of my big concerns because it creates this trickle-down effect. So it's not just my kid goes home, so now our nurses are, instead of being nurses, they're turning into detectives now. So they got to go around and track down 30, 40 kids, make sure they weren't in close contact. And then, like Mr. Soller was saying, not only our nurses, but our nurses' aides, our clerical staff, so the people who actually got to make the phone calls to the parents, because I know, getting that phone call saying you got to come pick your kid up and take them home and get them tested is not a pleasant phone call for our staff to make. And for our parents who want to have some clarity and some certainty that my student's going to be able to stay in school and learn, we don't want to put them in that position where they have to pull their kids out and vice versa. We don't want to put and burn out our staff because they're calling parents every day. Our nurses isn't getting the chance to work with our students with diabetes or special needs. They're running around with a notepad trying to do investigations on contact tracing. And unfortunately, this was different a year ago, and I think I said this to somebody. Last year it seemed like a piece of cake. We're hybrid. We had the recommendations in place. So this whole flow chart, exclusions, this was something we weren't even talking about last year. So as we try and navigate getting back to somewhat semblance of normalcy, I think all of us have got, and I myself find myself to be a little bit more patient because we are in uncharted territory. I don't think we've ever had a school district or a school year where we had to do contact tracing or we're sending kids home because they were exposed to somebody more than 3 feet for 15 minutes. I mean, this is totally new for us. So I think as we get through this, whatever plan we decide to agree on, or if we decide to agree on a plan that's going to put some metrics in place, one thing like I said, I want to make sure is that we don't rush into it, that we are giving ourselves enough time to collect data. And like Mr. Soller was saying, we are seeing the numbers trend downward. So that is a good thing, but I don't want to see ourselves going backwards. I want to see us continue to trend in that good direction. And it seems like right now, from the numbers I'm looking at, we are headed in the right direction, but I want to see us continue that momentum, whatever we decide to do.
Well, the good thing about this is that we do trend in the wrong direction. We have something built in that could change that right then and there within the buildings. And so it could be a building decision rather than the entire district decision moving forward. So,
And I like that, Jim, where we can put you back in control of maintaining the levels. You can move in or out, or actually the numbers are going to move in and out, not you personally, but we can.
the metric will.
The metrics might govern us to that direction. I'd like to see if we could, talk about the numbers and start working towards that. I mean, here tonight, I think I'd like our district to model our community, which is the recommendation of the mask, which is what our community is doing, which our local businesses are doing. Again, that comes with more of a self-check rather than being told you have to wear the mask. So, and I think we've seen the good and bad of that, but I hope we can just have this conversation tonight of the four of us and figure out working together, coming to a compromise, and seeing where we can get back on some level ground with folks.
So just out of curiosity, because I know we're talking about the numbers, we got that 0.5 or 0.75. So just kind of explain to me, so that means if we're obviously below 0.5, then obviously we're not worried about it. We're still going to stay in that recommend. But if we're in that 0.5 to 0.75, you're saying that potentially, depending on each building, that could still put us in a position where we may have to do some masking if that's.
I was going to recommend we either do a 0.5 or 0.75.
Okay.
So not in between there. So
Okay.
if we go 0.75, I believe that's about 28 kids over a 4-week period of time, not just 1 week, but 4 weeks, because we know we might have something higher. Or if you want to stay with 0.5, that's a recommendation. That's something that we can discuss. Same thing with the 1 to 1.25%. Close contacts I have in there, I'm not going to work on that right now. That's something I just threw in there because if we're following this model right here, that's going to take care of our close contact, or it should help out with our close contacts.
And then looking at those numbers, because we did see them trending in the good direction, what would our positivity rate be as of today? Because you said 0.5 to 0.75, so as of this week, I should say.
Where positivity rate is different from positive cases, so because the positivity rate is based off, yeah. So cases right now, I think we would be, where'd you pull that?
Point 0.079.
Wasn't that 13?
The last 4 weeks since October.
Oh, the last 4, okay. I don't have
We'll just use that for an example. So if we start on and just highlight, just go 813. So we're well below over the last 4 weeks of the 0.5%.
Almost like
It's
0.1%.
0.8%.
0.8%. So we are well below that average.
Okay.
0.08.
That would be a point.
0.08.
0.08.
Yeah, 0.08. So
Okay.
we are well below.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
So we would 0.08%. And I think, Jim, when you ran the first 6 weeks, you said that was at that 0.75%?
A little lower than that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was lower than that.
Okay. So like that week of the 30th, and I would imagine somewhere around there, we probably were over that metric if that was the number that we're looking at.
Yeah, yes. So we're looking at COVID cases. We're not looking at close contacts. So we
Okay.
got to look at the column that's on the far left, the COVID cases.
Okay. Right. So, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't know if anybody else had another comment.
I mean, would like the parents to have their choice regarding masks, but I do think this would be a step in the right direction if we can't come to an agreement regarding that. So, I know, Kevin, you said something about you'd like to see more data. Like, what were you thinking about in that terms of that?
And that was my only concern is if we see it headed in the right direction, I don't want to step away from it too quickly. So Mr. Stotler put out, the plan had a 4-week window. So I would like to see us collect more data, so then that way we don't have to rush through it. And also, but I do understand that parents need to see sort of like a light at the end of the tunnel. So just trying to find sort of that middle ground, because obviously we know we're not going to be doing this forever. Yep. But at the same time, I would like to see something put in place so we do have those safety measures, because my one concern is if we come back from Thanksgiving or Christmas and we don't see the numbers that we like, then do we have to have this whole discussion again, or are we going to have something in place which says, okay, if we're not seeing what we're like in a particular building or in a district, that we're going to put something in place that's going to provide that another layer of mitigation to get us out of that trouble zone, I guess is a good way to say it.
I believe Mr. Sotler's touched on this. This would have its own built-in measures with it.
If you were to, and we're just going to use this as an example, start this on October 3rd, if we retroactive to October 3rd, by the time the 29th comes, we will have 4 full weeks of data. So we'll have this week, which we'll get the information, and then we'll have the following Friday, which will be the last Friday. So we'll have 4 weeks of information from October to make a decision on. Or if you want to wait till later, started in November, that's up to the board. But we would have 4 weeks of information. So we would have 2 more weeks of data before this plan would go into effect.
Only reason why I say that is because we did have 5 good weeks of data before we started the mask, and then now we're kind of at 2.5. This is week 3 now. So, I just want to make sure that whatever decision we make, I know there's going to be some people who are going to be upset one way or the other, but I would like to just, like I said, make sure that we're not just rushing through this, that we are collecting data and not just saying, okay, well, we're just going to end this on, a week from now, because that's sort of my concern, is that if we do see some things trending in a good direction, that we don't just backtrack and say, okay, we're just going to stop this next week just because.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's my concern as well, especially as we head towards the winter months. And keep in mind, you still have other viruses, respiratory viruses and things out there as well. So I too wouldn't want to just move hastily. I do like the idea of having a set metric in place. And I would actually be more amenable to using the 0.5, but that's just me.
So Go ahead, Mr. Kruger.
So for Kevin and Monica, so you just said the 0.5. So if we were to adopt something of a positive, I don't, what do we call it? Positivity rate of 0.5, and that's something we would adopt, let's just say this evening, at the end of this month, Jim would run numbers, the district, and based on what that comes back with, we would start November out in. Is that the time that you guys are, because I know you don't want to say tonight and tomorrow, okay, we're in something different. Does that give you enough time or comfort to look at those numbers and have the numbers play out, that if we were to do something, it'd give it, what, another 2 weeks of data, and then based on those 4 weeks, we would look at what November brings us? Am I hearing that right?
I would, obviously 0.5 would be more, I'd be more comfortable with that number if we're gonna use this positivity number, obviously, that we see right here in front of us. Like I said, you know, obviously, we're not gonna be able to stretch this out, do it forever, and I understand that. My only thing is, like I said, we're looking at, essentially, we're still looking at just 3 weeks today. So if we could, I don't know, when would that put us in? 2 weeks from today, what date would that be?
At the end of the month, you'd have 5 and 5.
Yeah, at the end of the month, we'll have 5 weeks of data without mask recommended and 5 weeks of data with mask on. Because we started the week of September 27th.
Yeah, this is the 4th week starting today.
Yeah. And so at the end of the month, which would be October 29th, next Friday, we'll have 5 full weeks of data with mask on. With mask required, excuse me.
I mean, with the next 2 weeks, again, the way those played out with the mandate, and then start in November based on those numbers, we let the metric play out from there?
And then I'm assuming that would obviously, like you said, give us some flexibility in our buildings.
Per build, yeah, then we still have the per building clause that if there's an issue with one building, the health plan would move us, you know, mask mandate for that one building.
Correct.
Until it calms down, and then we can go back to the recommendations.
I guess I would be okay looking at least 5 weeks of data. And go.
Again, even if you approve this plan tonight, it would only start, it would start at the first of the month, pick a month, we'll say October, and it doesn't end until the end of the month. And so we're not going to make any decisions till we see the information from the October 29th, which will give us 5 weeks worth of data to sit here and say, our numbers continue to trend down. We're below the 0.5, we're 0.75, whatever you want to call it. And so the district-wide, we're going to go mask recommended. And within those 4 weeks that month, if it's above it, then we go stay mask required. So you'll have 5 weeks of data before this even goes into place. You could recommend a plan, you could say this is what we're going to do, but no decision will be made until next Friday.
I got you. So whatever we recommend, like you said, that it won't go into effect for at least until next Friday.
First month, the first Monday of the month. So that's when the new plan will go into effect, and that's when we'll start our whole cycle over again. So it's a 4-week period of time district-wide. If we're in mask required, we'll look at building data at the end of the week. If we see a school building that's above 1% or 1.2%, that Monday, they're going to go into mask required for 2 weeks.
That was going to be my follow-up question, because what I didn't want to see is us getting to the point where we're waiting until it becomes a huge problem. So you're saying in that 4 weeks window, if we see something going on at the high school or at the middle school, because I know we could put something in place as soon as we start to see an issue pop up if we feel like the numbers are too high or we don't like what we're seeing.
In that individual building, correct, but not district-wide. It could be all 4 buildings. But we'll look at the individual data each week to see, okay, are they below 1.25% of their student population? If yes, they're still in that mask recommended. If it's over, then they go in for 2 weeks of mask required. So we still have the ability to control spread if we see it in a building.
And then the 0.5 number, I know I would be more comfortable going with that 0.5, and I didn't hear from the other board member. I think Mrs.
I
Charlie
would
said
as
something
well,
about it.
the point.
But I'm not sure about that 0.5 or 0.75, so I would be more comfortable with the 0.5 being the number, but I guess I'd have to get more input from the other board members on what they're comfortable with.
I'd like to see a higher number, but I mean, I'm willing to look at the point, I'm willing to recommend a 0.5, even though I want a higher number, but, again, sometimes I don't like it, but I can live with it, and I think that's what my mindset's at. So, I mean, I wanted a 1%, but if you guys like the 0.5, we can come down and look at adopting that.
Okay.
I agree with Mr. Kruger. Obviously, I'm still for the parent's choice, but if this is what we need to do to get in that direction, I would be willing to listen.
Because who knows, in a month, we could be, looking at different numbers, and, hopefully it stays where we're at, but this is not a set in stone, just like, anything we do. I mean, it's a constant conversation that we have to have amongst us and come to agreements and give some and get some, to run, as large of a community that we do have, so. So is this, I mean, are you guys comfortable if I were to make a motion for this resolution?
Obviously, like Mr. Kruger was saying, I'm sorry, Monica, were you about to say something?
I
Okay.
was gonna say I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, so obviously it's not the ideal for me, but like Mr. Kruger was saying, at some point to get through this school year, because, we talk about this all the time. We have so many other bigger issues between our staffing levels. We obviously have a big construction project coming up, and I'm looking at what 2022 is gonna look like. So I would like to have some clarity for our parents, so that once we kind of have this discussion, then we can give them sort of like, this is what the final policy is going to be, so then we can continue to move forward, because we got so many other big things going on in our school district right now. So, one thing that's important to me is that, ideally, obviously, I'm ready for COVID to be over. I wish we didn't have to have these conversations, but if we have to, I want to make sure that we do it in a way that we can finally provide some type of semblance of consistency and finality to our parents, because like I said, coming in this school year, we really were in uncharted territory, even more so than last year, because there were so many restrictions and so much guidance from the state and the county. This year, they've given us all these recommendations, but essentially they've heaped all these responsibilities into our lap. So to be able to get through this school year and do it in a way where we're not constantly having a lot of uncertainty for our parents, this wouldn't be the ideal, but I would feel comfortable voting on something today, so then that way we can have a yes or a no and then move on to whatever the next big issue we got to deal with is.
Certainly, because I wouldn't also want this to keep coming up on the agenda every board meeting,
I would recommend for the building to do a 1.25
You would recommend for the building?
for the building.
I'm sorry, well, no, what
The
building?
positivity of 1.25
Per building.
per building.
If
Okay.
it's over 1.25.
Okay, I got you.
So is this a point that we can make motion and vote?
If you do that, you have to make a motion to amend the agenda.
The agenda, yeah,
Okay.
and then you can make your motion to, whatever motion that would be. But you have to make a motion, since we already approved the agenda without additions or deletions.
I'd like to make a motion to change the consent agenda to add a mask policy vote.
So, just to be clear, Mr. Kruger,
Yeah.
we can always put, because based on the rules, we can actually vote on it and put the action item in our discussion. Or if you feel more comfortable, we can put it in the back in the action items if that's what you want to do. But it seems like for our parents and obviously for some clarity, I think it might be better to go ahead and have the vote now, but unless you don't feel comfortable.
No, that's what I would like, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to make
Yes,
sure.
please.
So, just to be clear, we're making a motion to add a action, to amend the agenda and add an action item into our discussion.
Yes.
Okay.
So I got first from
So moved.
Mr. Kruger to motion.
Need a second.
I'll second.
Roberts, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put in an action item, and we're gonna put it in our discussion, and obviously that's gonna be a motion to adopt the draft plan that Mr. Sotler had presented this evening. And just to be clear, that's gonna be for our district positivity, our district case rate, that's gonna be at the 0.5. And then for our building positivity cases, you're recommending the 1.25.
Correct.
Okay. So just to provide some clarity for our parents. Okay, so we're adding that motion in, or that action item in, sorry. Okay, so, does anyone feel that needs more discussion, or are we comfortable taking a vote on this?
I just want to clarify with
Okay.
everyone.
Okay.
We're going to retroact this from October 3rd, will be the first week, and we'll go through the end of the month, which is the 29th. Okay, and in that 4-week period of time, if the district positive cases are less than 0.5%, we'll be in mass recommended. If it's over 0.5%, we'll stay in mass required. Okay, and then we'll start it all over again from November 1st till the end of the month for December. And in between there, if we are in mass recommended, if a building is over 1.25, then we go to mass required for 2 weeks for that building, individual building. Just want to clarify, and everyone is,
Sounds correct to me.
okay?
So,
Yeah, just remember, it's a working document, so, I mean, you'll be able to tweak and change the numbers if you need, to make it simpler. I think that's important to know.
so just to be clear, so before I call for a vote, is everyone comfortable with the action item as it stands, and everyone understands? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, Mr. Roberts, when you're ready, you can go ahead.
Need a motion and a second.
Okay, sorry about that. So we need a motion on the action item, and then obviously a second on that.
So move.
Second.
Okay.
So now that you move the action items?
You know, I think we're good now. So we have a motion and we have a second. So if there's no other questions or discussion on it, then Mr. Roberts, when you're ready, you can go ahead and call the roll.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler? Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. Okay. Motion passes 4-0. And we're going to move on to our public comment section. So just to be clear, we are going to stick to the 5-minute timeline. But I'm going to go through the names, and like I said, forgive me if I misspell your name. I'm going to try my best. But it looks like the first person up is Jessica Graham.
Okay, hello.
Is that on?
Okay. I'm loud anyway, so to be honest. All right. My name's Jessica Graham. I'm an educator. I'm a mother of 3 children that go to Canal, Winchester. I want to begin with saying I do not want a mask mandate. If you want to wear it, that's fine. I just don't want to see it be a mandate, be told. I'd like to begin with what school members are elected for. I checked over several sites. One said, represent the community, diverse beliefs and values. Another one said, most important responsibility is to work with their community to improve student achievement in local schools. One that we should all know is, we value input from our community members. Our participation allows for both of us to be better informed. That's the one from Canal, Winchester. In each of these responsibilities and definitions of the school board, community was the word that was mentioned. I've watched several of these board meetings, and I've written to all of you. With the response from some, it was very evident which way you were voting before even listening to the full community and for the emails that you might have received after mine.
which means that you were not taking in the complete community's thoughts and views. For that, I'm disheartened because you didn't listen to the whole community. And I'm sorry about that. That was my alarm to pick up my daughter. Now let's move on to what runs the schools. It's our teachers. When you're making this a mandate, you're putting more stress on your teachers. You're adding stress onto them. You're taking away their learning time, and you're making the environment different. You're expecting them to be policed, to make sure that they're always wearing their mask. You will hear, pull up your mask, cover your nose, don't share masks, don't put that back on after it's been on the floor. Once you wear it, don't put it back in the box. Then you have teachers reprimanding their students for not wearing their mask. You hear, pull a card. I'm going to call your parents. You just lost a dojo point. These are all statements that I have heard teachers make. Behavior is another thing I heard at the meeting. One parent I heard was saying that he told his child to wear a mask to school, but the teacher doesn't enforce it because it's not mandatory. For that comment, I have to say it is not the teacher's responsibility. It is the parent that needs to work with the child on his behavior strategies and respect between the child and the parent. And then at the meetings I kept hearing, don't make it political. The whole thing becomes political when you mention the CDC numbers, the reports about universities that are both receiving their money from the government. That makes it political. Now, if you want to talk just about Canal's numbers, or the numbers of Bloom Carroll compared to ours, or Pickerington, another local school district, you come to ours, then it's not political. With that being said, we look at our positive cases. From no mask to mask, nothing has really changed. Now, if we want to talk political, let's take a look at our world leaders. The U.S. has the most strictest mask mandates. The following information is in the folders that I gave to you. There's the websites and the articles. From the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control, no masking under 12. 12 and up only when it is feasible, so if the transmission is high. Then there's in there about Professor Dr. Jay Bajarov, a professor of medicine at Stanford University. He states about how young children need to see the faces of the people that they're around. This helps them learn people, body language, and interact socially. Children learn these important skills from watching people. And as we know, SEL, social emotional learning, is an important part right now in our schools. We talk about it all the time when we're making it difficult to do this. Another one, World Health Organization and UNICEF state, no children under 5, 6 to 11 range of factors to look at that. And when you look at the factors, our district doesn't go under any of those. We passed them. 12 and above, no mask if 3 feet apart, and there is not a widespread transmission. Then we have the UK. No mask. As a community, we have to come to the realization that this is not going to go away. We have to come to a spot where we learn to live with it. What can we do? I feel when we are talking about children, we need to let them be kids. Put the responsibility on the parents and let us make the choice. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm going to move on to the second name, and is it Elias Rittenhouse? Did I get that right?
Yep.
Awesome. All right.
Let you hold it. I don't know if it goes down there. There you go, buddy.
You want me to start?
Go right
Get
ahead.
ready.
Hi, I'm Elias Rittenhouse. I'm a student at Winchester Trail. I hope these masks are gone soon because they just trap the air you're breathing out. I don't get how students that do sports can be in the gyms without a mask and run around. But in my gym class, I have to wear one. I just don't get it. I get sweaty and play hard, and it gets hard to breathe. Please end the mandate on masks.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next name is it Anita Bernhardt?
Bernie,
Say it again.
Bernie, maybe?
It's the first name is Anita, Anita. I'm sorry. Sorry, I tried.
Dove, Bernie?
Yeah, the last name is, and then Dove, yep.
Okay.
Sorry about that. All right. Yeah, it was
Well, you
right
said Bernhardt, I wasn't
Yeah, I
quite
was-
sure. That's
yeah,
okay.
I got close.
That's okay. It's
All right.
Brunicardi. I'll do
All
it
right.
again. Not a
Thank you.
problem.
Appreciate it.
So, okay. So, no, I don't have anything written. I didn't do it the last time. I'm not doing it this time. I think you all know who I am. So I'm just going to start it off by saying an effective agent that typically is it is a molecule in a protein coat. It's too small to be seen by light microscopy, and my glasses aren't working. And it's able to multiply only with living cells of a host. Now, I asked you the last time when I was here if you knew the definition of a germ. And some of you looked like you did, and some of you looked like a lot of my students used to look in a class when they weren't paying attention. So I thought I'd go ahead and bring the definition back up to you. Listening to what you all just went through, kudos for coming up with a plan. I appreciate that. However, I don't think you understand you're not medical professionals, and you were not implemented and put into these positions to be that. What you were done, what most of you were voted in. And I'd like to make a very quick point here. With all of this mask mandate and with the coronavirus and everything that's gone out, it has brought out really the worst in a lot of people that we did not suspect. I would like to state that as elected officials, you all have to get reelected. Now, for the ones that are coming on November 2nd, you have a cakewalk because America's parents were asleep. We're not asleep now. We're 400 plus in just one group, and I hope with more facts that goes to 800, and then that goes to 1,600. Do you see where I'm going here? Because I know that you like your positions. I think you want to stay in them. However, you need to keep in what you were supposed to do, which is not put your personal agenda and political arena involved in here. We at no time have hit even what you all were just discussing as a percentage for masks recommended. Yet in a 2-week time frame, I saw you all magically bring on a mask mandate. So I find that rather ironic. Instead of using the 0.5%, which you voted on, since everybody couldn't come to a collective effort, why did you not go to a 0.65? Dead in the middle of that. But you didn't. Now, the children are the ones that are suffering. Do you know the fact that 605 kids in the United States of America, 605, and those are beautiful lives that were lost, but that's 605 in all of the United States who have died from COVID. You're at 0.000001. Now, the numbers that are here, and for some reason, people on the left think they are the only ones that can be touched or moved by something. That is not true. Quit making it political. Keep it at numbers. Keep what you're supposed to be doing, which is not mandating masks when you don't have the facts. You're not sitting in the classrooms. Quit making the teachers become mask Nazis versus educators. And you've done that. Not us. You have. You've chosen to do it. And whether or not you believe in it, and I believe in it wholeheartedly, karma can be a bitch. It really can. So please, quit playing politics with these kids. Quit. Stop. And guess what? I heard someone say another surge in November. You are going to have one. You know why? Because you have flu and cold, RSV, which, by the way, RSV is making a huge comeback, and that's what's going on in children's nationwide right now, not COVID. Just as an FYI, look at your numbers there. So, please, pay attention to that. If you had this much compassion or tenacity to make parents in past years wear a mask or not send their kids when they had the cold or the flu or the strep, wow, how fantastic that would have been. But you didn't then. You don't now. So please, instead of playing politics, Do what you were put in to do and just stick with education, because you're right. We need a lot more of that. Better education, not this. Thank you.
We're going to move on to our next person. Is Becca Dawson.
Thank you. Just a disclaimer, all of this was written obviously before the discussion that you had, and thank you for the discussion. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My hope is that you see this issue through a different lens than just numbers, facts, links, and articles. I have none of that for you. I think we can all agree it stopped being about numbers and facts last month. Instead, tonight, what I want to talk to each of you is from the heart of a parent. To unpack my personal journey with the Canal Winchester Local School District, I will begin with just one word: partnership. Our type of partnership, defined on a quick internet search from the National Center of Safe and Supportive Learning Environments, states, family school partnerships are a shared responsibility and reciprocal process. That definition has always been true as a parent in the district for the past 8 years, and I have plenty of examples of how. The partnership started early, when my son was in first grade. Due to his shyness, he had trouble reading aloud for the teacher when she was trying to collect data on his reading skills. Rather than tackle the problem on her own, the teacher reached out to me, his mother, who she said knew him best. We came up with a plan, and she partnered with me. She allowed me to come into the classroom so that he could read to me and she could get her assessment. The partnership worked, and I believe he wouldn't be the student that he is today without both of us working together. The next year, while volunteering at the school through 2 incidences I witnessed firsthand, it became obvious to me that the substitute teacher situation was dire. Students were also being divided and placed into several other classes due to the substitute shortage. Wanting to partner with the district that I love, I took the steps to become a substitute teacher, where I accepted positions when I could fit it into my schedule. That same year, the district was starting the process to write a fresh and new vision and mission statement. They reached out to many different stakeholders in the community to partner with what families wanted for our district. One can only assume many stakeholders were involved because many voices are valuable to the mission. I was part of that team, and week after week, we collaborated until the job was done. Yet another example happened last year. My daughter had some attention issues in the classroom. Even though the teacher could have handled the situation however she wanted to, she instead partnered with me. We discussed what was going on, and we came up with a plan. The steps we took together did in fact help with her attention issues, and I know school and home collaborating together was a huge part of her success. The partnership continued at the beginning of this school year, when parents were given the option of their child wearing masks. Since there was no state mandate, you partnered with us by allowing it to be our choice. You showed support for all of us, either way. The exact words spoken at the July 19th school board meeting was, and I quote, "It is important that we give people the option of doing this rather than forcing them to do it," end quote. It was another win-win for Canal Winchester. Parents who were fearful had the peace of mind that their child was wearing a mask, while parents who did not feel comfortable having their child on a mask had that option as well. On September 20th, years of trust and friendship came to an end when 3 people on the board voted to end the partnership. There was no reciprocal process or opposing voices taken into consideration. There was no level-headed plan put in place. There was no critical thinking or common sense specific to where our numbers were or unique to our schools. What we got instead was a board who made an abrupt decision based on a recommendation from the governor who wouldn't do it himself. His recommendation was based on a back-to-school surge that was already coming down in our district. Since then, it has created a community of hostility, division, and frustration. But there is good news and a way to heal the partnership. So as I close, please allow me to offer a resolution. Partner with us again. Show us the partnership matters. Show our children you don't view them merely as vectors of this virus. At the very least, show us that you have discussed a path to end the mandate. Let's not bring the partnership back to where it was. Let's make it even better.
Thank you. And our next person is Gina Cosgrave.
I'm 5 minutes younger than her, so I've always been behind her. So that's a really hard act to follow. But I just wanted to, I don't have anything written either. I'm speaking from my heart. I'm really asking for you to partner with us as well. I came into this district in 2015. It was a dream of mine coming from a school that had 15 elementary schools, 4 middle schools and 3 high schools, to have this small community that I felt absolutely loved my children. I haven't felt that way this year. And that's mainly because of the mandate. I would have a really hard time believing that you could say that you care for all of our children when you don't know all of them, and that's okay because it's our responsibility. But to me, I can't imagine if I was a teacher or I was in charge of a school district and your son or daughter, if I handed them a condom or a birth control pill or something of that nature, you would be outraged over that. Well, that's how I feel about this mandate. You don't have the authority to tell our kids that they have to wear a mask mandate at all. And the CDC is not a group of men behind a Zoom call in a conference room that gets to make decisions for our children. So I also appreciate the conversation this evening, and I do think that it's going in the right direction, so thank you.
So our next speaker, our next voice is going to come from Paul Markoff.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here. First of all, I want to say last year I came and I was complaining that we weren't in schools. I'm glad we're back. I'm sorry that I'm back again to voice my opposition to the mask mandate. But I want to start by saying thank you to everyone. Administrators, school board members, the teachers and principals that are here. There are probably some people that I disagree with here. And I just think it's great that everyone is here. We're all doing the best to support our kids, even if I'm very adamant that the school board made a bad decision with the mandate. I am going to bust out a CDC number here to start. That is, since the beginning of the pandemic, which they have as the beginning of January 4th, 2020, there are 419 children that have passed due to COVID-19 complications or as part of it. That is less than 1/10 of 1%. It equates to about 99.98% have lived after contracting COVID. A very minute amount. Actually, put into context, almost twice as many children have died of pneumonia. We didn't have any mask mandates when pneumonia was around, or the flu for that matter. Again, most of those deaths probably were prior to the vaccine too. Certainly children ages 12 and above have now had the opportunity to have the vaccine, and of course other children that haven't been vaccinated are less likely to get it because many of the adults are now vaccinated. One thing that hasn't been talked about in this meeting and really hasn't been part of the public discourse has been the negative side to masks. There's debate as to whether masks are really that effective. I think they are to a minor extent. That being said, there are things that are negative about wearing masks in schools. Some of the people have already spoken to those problems. I don't think educators are as successful teaching. Children aren't as successful at learning when we're wearing masks. I think it can have a negative psychological, mental, emotional, and social downside to wearing masks. I could come up with some specific examples. But I think in broader context, we see certain numbers, and again, I'm going to bust out some CDC numbers here. The suicide attempt rate in children is up 2.4%. So over doubled. That was in the spring of 2020. In the summer of 2020, the suicide rate went up 1.7%, so 170%. And then in the winter last year, when almost everyone was back in schools, it was 2.1%. So 2 times the number of suicide attempts were occurring while children were going to school with masks on. I don't know if there's a direct correlation or not, Some people here want to make the direct correlation between the numbers going up and down due to COVID because we're wearing masks. Well, let's look at the suicide rate too. Other things have been going up as well. Violence, depression and anxiety in our kids, drug and alcohol use. These are things that we put blocks in their way. We put masks in their faces. I think it's leading to depression, anxiety, and stress. But don't necessarily just take my word. In an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal, as of August 8, 2021, Dr. Marty McCrae, professor at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and also Dr. H. Cody Messner, chief pediatric infectious diseases at Tufts Children's Hospital. He also served on the FDA external advisory panel for the COVID-19 vaccines. Both stated in their op-ed piece, facial expressions are integral to human connection, particularly for young children. We're only learning how to signal fear, confusion, and happiness. Covering a child's face mutes these nonverbal forms of communication and can result in robotic and emotionless interactions, anxiety, and depression. Seeing people speak is a building block of phonetic development. It is especially important for children with disabilities, such as hearing impairment. I want to close, and again, pointing out the banner that you're sitting in front of that says empowering all students. I can't think of anything less empowering than putting a mask on our kids and not allowing them the social, psychological, and emotional development by putting that in place. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so the next person on the list is, and I'm going to make sure I get this right. Is it Clint? Is it Brysondine? Brizendine. I was close.
It's a difficult name.
All right, it's in the ballpark.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm going to be
Step up to the mic a little bit. Yeah, there's people at home that want to hear you.
Sorry.
That's right.
Didn't know this was a broadcast. Anyway, I'm a parent of a student in Canal, Winchester. I have a son and a daughter. Anyway, I'm here really just to inform people as to some things I've found looking into COVID and masks and things of this nature. So from the U.S. Census Bureau, there are 342,020 people in Franklin County from the ages of 0 to 19. This is as of 2018. From the Ohio COVID dashboard, there have been 28,819 confirmed cases of COVID in Franklin County. 398 of those were hospitalizations. One was a fatality. Now, if you take these numbers and you do a little bit of basic math, that comes down into 8.426% of the Franklin County population confirmed contracted COVID. 0.116% of those were hospitalized, and 0.000292% was a fatality. So these are the risks from COVID. Here are some studies about the risks with masks. This is a British Medical Journal study in 2014. Basically, particle penetration for cloth masks was at 97%. How effective are they? And then it also was studying medical masks, which had a particle penetration of 44%. And these were worn by medical professionals, trained in how to wear masks in an adverse environment. Now, I'm going to talk about a University of Antwerp study that was just published in September of 2021, and it was rather unique in that they were looking at cotton and surgical masks in community settings with bacterial contamination and face mask hygiene. They were looking for bacterial load on the interior of the mask, including on the face and around the mouth and nose and in the nasal cavities, to see if wearing a mask and which type of masks would increase these bacterial loads. And they found that the cloth masks the bacterial load on the inside of the mask increased by 93.8 times. This is a broad spectrum of bacteriums. Some were streptococcal, some were staphylococcal, and others. The surgical mask had an increase of 208 times. Now, the study was conducted over a 4-hour time frame. They swabbed the mask, swabbed the face of the person about to wear the mask, cultured those, and then in 4 hours redid the swabs. And this is what happened. Now, that's a pretty marked increase in bacterial load just for 4 hours of wearing a cotton cloth mask or a surgical mask, which are highly sterilized, sprayed with antibacterial, packaged, and then presented to medical health professionals. And then they are trained in the wearing of these to prevent penetration of viruses and other bacteriums, right? They found that 43% of this viral load was resistant to antibiotics of at least one type. The two types they tested were ampicillin and erythromycin. Sorry, pretty complicated medical terms. 6% of these viruses or bacterium were resistant to both. They also found that 21.3% and 38.5% of isolates were resistant to these regardless. Now, you would say, why is bacteria so important? Well, our wonderful Dr. Fauci, he had a study back in 2015 looking at the cause of the Spanish flu in the early 1900s. And he concluded that the Spanish flu was not the predominant killer. It was secondary bacterial pneumonia. The same bacterium that are on these masks that our children are forced to wear for at least 4 hours. I'm just saying, these are the facts, and I'm just here to present them.
I didn't want to cut you off. I just want to let you know that you passed your 5 minutes. I wasn't trying to be
Anyway,
rude.
that was my whole presentation. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on to the next public voice, I have Ms. Amber Huffman.
I want to start by asking a few questions, rhetorical questions that is, since this isn't an open discussion. If the weatherman told you this morning that there was a 0.03% chance of rain today, would you walk outside your house with an umbrella? If you had a 0.03% chance of getting hit in the head with a flying object in the classroom, would you send your kid to school with a helmet? If you were told you had a 0.03% chance of getting into a car accident every time you started up your vehicle, would you still drive? If you were told you had a 0.03% chance of choking while eating, would you still consume food? If mothers had a 0.03% chance of dying during childbirth, would that stop any of you from having children? You see, all of these questions sound absolutely absurd at such a low rate. In fact, there are higher percentages for several of those categories, yet it doesn't stop anybody from carrying on in their daily lives. Perhaps it's because the media doesn't blow those numbers out of proportion. Perhaps it's because there's no financial gain for talking about them. Or perhaps, just maybe the percentages are so low that they don't warrant a threat to the general population. I contacted the school board to get the exact number of students enrolled at each school, so I wasn't going off of false information on the internet. There is a 0.03% chance of contracting COVID within our district. 0.03. In most charts, anything below 1% isn't even recorded because the number is so low. I'd like to ask, why would we implement a mask mandate when the number is so low? At what point do we say enough is enough? At what percent is acceptable enough for you to remove this mandate? I emailed all of you a couple weeks ago without any response, so I'd like to remind you about my daughter and her experience over the last few weeks. I received a mask exemption approval the Friday before the mandate was implemented. That Monday was just a normal day for my daughter, so we thought. She told us that evening at the dinner table that a group of kids asked her why she wasn't wearing her mask, and she told them because her mommy said so. A little boy then proceeded to tell her, "Your mommy is bad." I explained to my daughter that he didn't mean that and she had an exemption and didn't have to wear a mask. That following morning, she was frantically searching through her junk drawer to find a mask. When I asked her what she was doing, she broke down crying, saying she didn't want to be made fun of and she didn't want to be the only kid not wearing a mask. Do you see the problem with this at all? Do you see the differences that my child now notices because of this mandate? My child feels isolated and alone now as a result. This mandate doesn't keep her safe. In fact, it's done the complete opposite. She no longer feels safe or welcomed. The weeks following this particular day have been hell, to say the least. My daughter has written on school papers that she doesn't like school. She cries during drop-off. Her shoulders slump when entering the building after being confronted about not having a mask. This is not okay. Some of you are probably happy to hear that my daughter asked her teacher for a mask just so she can feel included. Do you think that it's okay to teach our kids to go with the flow? Wear this mask or you'll be labeled. Wear this mask or you'll be chastised by your classmates. This is what this mandate has done to these kids. I know my daughter isn't the only one. I spoke with my daughter's teacher, who verified that she noticed a change in her demeanor after the mandate was implemented. I also had to take my daughter to the doctor, where it was verified the issues we are dealing with at home are stress and anxiety related. Why are we doing this to our children? My daughter is 6. Maybe the answer to all of this is to switch all of our kids' school's desks with restaurant tables and place a sporting event on the TV in the class so they can spectate, since COVID apparently doesn't exist when eating at a restaurant or playing or spectating a sport. There's absolutely no logic whatsoever to this mandate, and on behalf of my 6-year-old daughter who is struggling, I am begging you to consider it optional.
Moving on to our next person. Is it Kara Brown or Cara Brown? Kara, awesome.
I'm a little nervous. I have a 7th grader, 6th grader, and 4th grader, and
Good, yeah.
we strongly disagree with the mask mandate. Mine's a little different perspective, religious reasons, and I was denied 3 times by Mr. Sotler for a religious exemption, and I don't know if that's a vote or exactly how that works, but I think that that should be an option for families that feel like they qualify. I want to make you aware tonight that I am talking to a lawyer regarding this. We disagree so much that we have withdrawn the kids from school, which is sad. They were honor roll students in gifted classes, and I would like for you guys to reconsider for the other parents out there that can't withdraw their kids and homeschool. Thank you very much.
On to our next person. I have Steve Smith.
Can I defer my time to speak last?
Be honest with you, Mr. Smith, I know we're trying to respect the process, so, you know, if your name is on the list, if you don't want to speak, that's fine, but I would recommend that if you wanted to speak, that you signed up, I would go ahead and take your 5 minutes.
Can I defer to speak last? Is that okay? I'm still going to be here. I just want to listen. I want to give everyone an option because I have different perspective.
I mean, at the same time, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, so, you know, Mr. Smith, if I'm just going to go down the list, so you have your 5 minutes, so I don't want you to feel like we're cutting you out, because I wouldn't want to do the same thing for someone else who might have a different perspective who wanted to speak last. So I wanted to give you your 5 minutes. So if you want them, the floor is yours, sir.
All right. First off, I want to point out all you parents and children. First off, can I get a quick show of hands? Quick, can you guys help participate? Everyone? Okay. I cannot have kids. Okay. I'm here as a concerned citizen of this school district who lives in a neighborhood right around the corner. All the kids love me. I help them repair their bikes. I work on their parents' cars. I help out in the community as much as I can. I met some of these brave parents, you know, just again, being out in the community. I ride a motorcycle. I raise money for all kinds of charitable events around this community. I'm here to support you guys. You guys know when I met you at the meeting we had, I'm here for you. I don't know a lot about the school district and the school boards and what your guys' job is other than representing your constituents. That's what I know of from our elected officials. Okay, I've been ignorant for most of my life when it comes to not voting. I just registered to vote first time last year. Because of my past and my history, I was told that I was not eligible to vote. I was told that my rights were not those of everyone else because of my past. Once I came to find out what my rights were, I registered to vote, and I'm trying to do as much as I can for the community. What I see in the school district and what I see out in the streets and seeing the kids run around the neighborhood, I love what these parents have brought up, and there's just why right now I'm not going to speak to statistics. Everyone's got them. You can look them up. Everyone knows that. What breaks my heart is exactly what the last parents brought up. I see some of these kids that feel excluded because they don't understand what the adults, what your job is, what our job is to do to teach them as ignorant kids. Okay? They're not stupid. They just don't know. It's our job to teach them, okay, every aspect of life, the good, the bad, the ugly, okay? Where I grew up, trust me, I see this community and it's beautiful. It's not where I grew up. I want to see the kids in this community be able to come to school and see the beautiful smiles on these kids' faces. Little man, thank you so much. That was so brave of you to come up here and speak, man. That was awesome. Good for you, man. Keep that up. Okay, we got to see these kids, and they got to see our faces. They got to understand the facial expressions. Again, another parent brought up the psychological, downfalls to wearing these masks and not seeing people's facial expressions. You can see a little bit of a smile with a squint of an eye. Okay, you can see certain things, but the knowledge they get from seeing our facial expressions, understanding the human interaction that we get from each other, that's invaluable. Okay, you guys have got to understand, again, like some people brought up, it's not a left-right, this is a bipartisan issue where you guys have got to understand, again, everyone's parents. I can't speak to that aspect. I'm speaking to the humanity of you guys and respecting, again, another parent brought up, your positions as an elected official and to represent your constituents. So please, again, I came here to support the families and the parents and the kids that play around my neighborhood. That's what I'm here for. I just wanted to come, which is why I wanted to speak last. I wanted to hear what everyone had to say because, again, reading body language, I think there's going to be a few opposing arguments to this mandate. But guess what? That's what we're here for. That's what our Republic of the United States is for us to come and all speak it out and talk it out. Okay, but to find the middle ground, I appreciate, again, I talked to a couple of the parents. I know this is a school board, superintendent, lawyer. Okay, so I'm getting to know who's who, but I appreciate all your guys' time, and I appreciate your positions, but understand that, I think someone brought up, you guys are here for a reason, and I think it is to do your jobs of what the parents and the community or constituents want you to do. And that's all I'm here to do is support the parents. I'm going to stay here all night. I have a lot of people. I just was on a bike run with 3,000 bikes over the weekend, and they said, hey, let us come. I said, I don't think the building's big enough for us. I said, let me see what's going on, and if I got to make a couple calls and bring some more support from around the area, I can have that done in a drop of a dime. And I think that you will understand that this small room right here doesn't remotely represent our cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, the next name on the list is it Leah Balint? Balint, okay. Sorry about that.
I'm Leah Ballant. I live at 3372 Mason Road. I'm going to be the unpopular one tonight, aside from a couple of you all. So my son's high risk. My son is that 0.00000.1 that a lot of people don't seem to care about. That's my son. If he gets it, be a death sentence. So I promise you, if you were wearing my shoes, your notes would be different than the ones that you have in your hand. So I'm speaking as a mother bear who cares very much for her child. I'd like to start, well, continue, I guess, by thanking each one of you for your service, especially during such a tumultuous time within our community. I'm really sorry this was dumped in your laps. It's not fair. I think we can all agree that this is not fair, that we're all here. It shouldn't be happening here. And for those of you who don't remember me, like I said I spoke before, and I have a son that's high risk. He's in preschool, and my daughter is a first grader. And as I mentioned, after speaking at the last meeting and just seeing what is going on within our community, become clear that while some care, there's a lot of people that just don't seem to care about the vulnerable. So tonight, instead of talking about how valuable my son is to our family and to society, I'm going to talk about some of those numbers that we talked about. The numbers that I'm going to share with you are from the Canal Winchester Schools COVID statistics page. There's the statistics from the 3 weeks prior to the mask mandate versus the 3 weeks after. The bottom line is, before mask, there were 66 positive cases and 272 close contact cases. After mask, there were 24 positive cases and 78 close contact cases. So when you do the math, from before the mask mandate to after, you have 42 less positive cases and 194 less close contact cases. In my opinion, and I think a lot of professional opinions, statistics support the fact that the masks are working in our schools, and that the previous vote by you, the board, for a mask mandate in Canal schools was the right decision, and because of that decision, more kids have been able to stay in school. To address another point, last meeting and this meeting, some parents expressed concerns about the mental health of students wearing masks in schools, and I get it. I hate wearing a mask. I hate that our kids wear masks. I really understand it, I really do. But let's talk about the other kinds of mental health, okay? Which is worse when it comes to mental health, wearing a mask at school, or 1, catching COVID, or 2, being quarantined for 10 days due to exposure to COVID? Let's dive deeper into the discussion of mental health. Let's talk about the 272 close contact students prior to the mask mandate who could not go to school for 10 days to learn and see their friends, the complete isolation they were in while quarantined. Let's talk about the mental health of the parents who had to worry about their children and themselves being exposed to COVID. Let's talk about the parents' mental health as they had to scramble to find someone to watch their children for 10 days, had to figure out how to continue to have their children learn while they were away from school. And if the parents themselves had to quarantine, they had to miss work for 10 days and lose income. What about their mental health? And just a reminder, that number again was 194 less close contact cases. Let's also talk about the kids and parents who rely on the Canal Winchester School Food Program. As you're all aware, Canal has one of the best food programs, I have to think, in our whole country. My daughter gets free breakfast, free lunch, and if we wanted to, she could come back and get bags and bags of groceries for the rest of the week. What about the mental health of the families that are suddenly cut off from this crucial program due to exposure and quarantine? We can all agree that kids learn best in the classroom, and it's the job of the school board to keep our kids safe and to keep our kids in school. State test scores have dropped across Ohio from 2019 to 2021, including here in Canal, where we've seen a drop of almost 13 points. Our students need to be in the classroom, and until a vaccine is available to all, this is the only way to ensure this is through masks. You guys already did the metric system. My just other last request, which it's kind of late now, but my son can be vaccinated probably in November. Come December, I will be out of your hair. I'll probably still come to the board meetings because these are really cool, actually. But just give my kid a chance to get vaccinated. Just give my kid a chance to get vaccinated. And then I don't care what you do. Don't vaccinate, don't mask. But that's just, again, a mama bear talking from my shoes. Thank you again for everything you all do. And I do respect you all, I really do. I don't like telling you all what to do. I just am scared for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to our next speaker, which is going to be Mrs. Vangela Barnes.
Hi. First, I'd just like to thank the board and Mr. Sattler and everybody for reconsidering and considering some of the options that are on the table. While we've been talking tonight, I've been taking lots of notes and just thinking about everything that's been said today. One of the things that I wanted to ask was about the turf and track. I know everybody wants to talk about masks, and I want to talk about it a little bit, but I also want to bring up a few of the other things. And maybe you guys can give me an answer later on. It doesn't have to be today. But I'd like to know a little bit about the turf and track. Was there an RFP put out for that? How was the contractor chosen? And then the other question I would like to ask about is, I'm glad to see that they're doing the information on the middle school and the careers in Canal Winchester class. What I'd like to know, has our district looked into Young Scholars or Upward Bound? Both of those programs start at the end of 8th grade or towards the end of 8th grade. And we have 25% of our school district is minorities. And in addition to that, most of our school district is in Franklin County. Our school sits in Franklin County. And because of that, I believe that our kids could be also eligible for both of those programs, which provide students with a stipend to be educated further along during the summer. They do things during the school year. They participate in programs during the school year, and it prepares them for college. And at the end of those programs, after a 4-year time period, they get a free, full ride to Ohio State University. I know this because my son participated in Upward Bound all the way through 9th grade, and when I moved to Canal did not consider the program. But because I was able, as a parent, to take him back and forth to Ohio Dominican myself, he continued to stay in the program, and he was selected for one of the most prestigious scholarships that Ohio State has, which is the Morrill Scholarship, and he was given a 5-year full scholarship to Ohio State. I would like to see more of our students get that scholarship, and I would like to see more of our students participate in Upward Bound and Young Scholars, because both of those programs are very good for teaching our kids about what's available for them after college, what's available for them after high school. Also, the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the motion that we just had on the floor. In my numbers, in my estimate, Winchester Trails has about 1,000 kids, so I think that's about 12 kids if you talk about the 1.25%. Indian Trails has about 770 kids, so that's about 9. Canal Winchester High School has about 1,160 kids, which means that's about 14. And the Canal Winchester Middle School has about 975 kids, which is about 12. Did you guys consider that when you were talking about the numbers of 1.25? I just want to put that in your head before you talk about that later on. But I know you said 1.25 per building and 0.5 for the district overall is what I understood that you're going to vote on. Then the other thing I wanted to ask you was, or it's not necessarily asked, I wanted to just tell everybody too that I believe that I'm in agreement with the board about the mask, and I'm in agreement with the board about continuing to keep the mask, especially with trick or treat coming up. Everybody's going to be masked up for that, I guess. And then there's Thanksgiving, and there's Christmas. And I'm concerned about kids and our parents and our families that are all going to be around each other. I've had 2 kids who've had COVID. My 18-year-old got it during basketball season. He was 17 then. And my son just had it, and he's 25. He works in the construction industry. He was very, very sick, and he's only 25 years old. He's never had any health problems, never had any issues. He's in the military. He was a lucky one of the luckier ones. And I always say that because there are people who I know who have died from COVID, and young ones and old ones. And I just want to make sure that we don't just discount it because it hasn't happened to us. My brother was very, very sick, and thank God, and because of prayer and because of him fighting for his life, he made it through too. But he's 57 years old. He has other underlying conditions, but he made it through, and not everybody does. And so I'm agreeing with the parent who was just up here who talked about the one person. It doesn't matter if it's just one. We don't want anybody to get sick and die if we could help it.
Thank you, Mrs. Barnes. And we're going to move on to our next speaker, which is going to be, and I believe is it Leah Irving? Is that correct?
First, I'd like to start off by addressing the rumors that I heard regarding Mr. Yanati and his family. Though we fervently speak out against masks, that is what we are doing, speaking out. We do not condone violence in any form, even if it is simply the threat of doing so. We find it appalling and unforgivable. We denounce it here, now, and in the future. Beyond that, I don't want to throw numbers at you all, and I don't think it'll do any good. You've made it clear the numbers don't seem to make any difference. After the first couple weeks, which brought kids together, and obviously anything would increase for those first couple weeks and have a small outbreak, after that the numbers went down on their own, and they were continuing to go down at approximately 9 cases every single week, and yet you put in a mask mandate anyway. Then in the last 3 weeks that we've had numbers, one of those weeks it went up. It would seem you might start to listen to us, that the masks don't do what you're wanting them to do, yet even with the discussions tonight, that doesn't seem to be the case. Not to mention the hypocrisy in masking from 7:30 to 3:30, yet not after 4 p.m. if kids are doing sports. It's almost like you're alienating the entire district and parents, no matter what they believe, in one fell swoop. In addition, you seem to keep talking about the kids being in the classroom at all costs. I emphasize that last part because it is at the cost of what is best for some of our children. We've done your job for you and looked into some of these legalities in case you aren't aware. Do you know that you actually don't have to follow this flow chart? It is only a recommendation coming from you guys. You have no ability to enforce a flow chart that only the health department can enforce. You can recommend that we quarantine. We don't actually have to listen to that. Additionally, there are districts around us, Bloom, Carroll, Fairfield Union, and others, that have told the health department as much. We don't work for you. It's your job. We're going to stick to being school boards and doing what we have to do. There are some things that you do have to do, like report cases and that type of thing. And obviously, I realize that some of your staff will still have to have nursing and so forth if kids are sick. There is always going to be some threat of infection. COVID is not the only thing that matters, though. Regarding masks being mandated on public transportation, it was brought up earlier, but I'd like to cite the Ohio Revised Code 5501.01 that states public transportation does not include school bus transportation, period. It was said earlier that's above your pay grade. I don't understand that. It's Ohio Revised Code. It's already a law. It seems like you guys have a self-fulfilling prophecy of picking and choosing what time you want to enact masks or not enact masks, or which laws you want to listen to or not listen to, or listening to CDC guidelines even though they have no authority over us anyway. We are doing what we are supposed to do as parents. We are acting within the law. We are addressing you here at these meetings peacefully despite being ignored continually. You seem to be committing crimes, as in practicing medicine, when you yourself have stated you have no degrees or authority to basically make these decisions for our children. That is besides the religious exemptions which were brought up earlier. When we believe in immune systems that are God-given, you have no right to force us to make our kids compromise those by masking all day, every day. Not to mention one of my kids is having side effects from the mask that basically wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for you deciding to take parental rights away. I implore you to let all this go away. Go back to being a school board or remove yourselves from it entirely. If you can't do what's best for our children, then perhaps you shouldn't be in the position that you're in.
And moving on to our next speaker. I'm going to spell the first name because I don't want to, I've been butchering them all day. It's MacQuinte. There we go. I just don't want to make sure I get that right the first time this time. All right. Thank you.
First, let me say thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I also want to say that you all are doing a good job despite the circumstances that are going on. I know you have a tough position ahead of you. I'm here to ask that you continue the mask mandate. I say this based on what I see on a daily basis as far as an employee at Children's Hospital. COVID patients in children are rising, along with RSVS, but it's rising. Kids are not coming down there as far as their mental health because they're required to wear a mask. They are coming down there because they are scared to catch the virus. They are coming down there because they are being bullied in school. They are coming down there for mental health because they are away from their friends when schools were closed. It has nothing to do with them wearing a mask. I believe that the children, they don't have a problem with wearing a mask. It's the parents who's pushing their perspective on them. And it was just stated, the child went to school, a kid asked, why aren't you wearing a mask? And she responded, because my mom said so, but she was willing to go home and get a mask to wear it. As far as your numbers have decreased since you have mandated the children to come to school with a mask on. The mask, it is helpful. We can see that within the community. More people are wearing their masks. People are being vaccinated. So of course, with those numbers, you're seeing a decrease in those numbers. So I think you all should consider that. And as a board members, you took an oath to the community. I feel as if you should have a backbone and not allow the people who are not for their kids to not wear a mask. I feel like you shouldn't let their opinion affect your decision and not be scared. And then lastly, I would state, provide the parents with options. If they don't want their kids to wear a mask, provide them an option to let their kids stay home and do school online. So that's all I have to say. Please take that into consideration.
Thank you. So I have two more names here. One I can read. One is a little bit hard. The initials, the first initial is A, the last one is the letter D. I don't want to mess their name up because it's a little hard for me to read. So if you could. What's your first name? Yes, that's it. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Thank you.
My name is Alicia Patrick, and I've lived in Canal, Winchester my entire life. I love this town, its soul, its kindness, its peace, its small business community, and its charm. What has happened across the last month since the masking mandate was voted in for our school is confusing, to say the least, because the circumstances surrounding your vote and the implementation of the mandate have not felt like anything even remotely resembling the town ethics that I know exist. I'd like to quickly tell you the 17-day story that led us to withdraw our 6-year-old from Indian Trail Elementary School, a school that he and we grew to love very quickly. My son was thriving and excited to go to his school. When he sees the little CW emblem around town, he says, "That's my school," or "I love my school." We were all in, and he was happy. We loved the building, his teacher, and his precious little classmates. But everything changed on September 20th when you decided, despite our lowering COVID numbers, to interject a district-wide masking mandate, confusing many children and changing the culture of the school itself. We knew going into this year that anything was possible as far as COVID measures were concerned, but we were surprised by how quickly the mandate happened. There is no citywide mandate or a statewide mandate, so it was your selective, conscious choice that brought me to this moment. Upon the announcement of the mandate, I was concerned because my specific child had never had to mask for an entire school day. He did the koala option last year, and all other masking requirements in his life for the last nearly 2 years have been very brief. But the impression I had about all of you is that you seem to be caring and reasonable people. I listened in to some of your meetings for the 2020 school year, and I was very impressed by your recognition that you have a very diverse community with many different needs and opinions, and you seem to be taking all of them into account for your 2020 school plan. So when I began asking questions about the mandate this year, I expected there would be very reasonable accommodations, including medical and religious exemptions for families and children who were struggling with the mandate, but that has not been the story for my family. After sending long emails to most of you for several days, I requested we meet in person because it was far too difficult to articulate my feelings behind a screen. All 4 of the meetings I had with many of you sitting here seemed to go very well, and I left feeling encouraged that we were able to have a face-to-face discussion. We also appreciated a phone call we had with one member who could not schedule an in-person meeting with us. These meetings led me to ask for a religious exemption for my child. Amidst all of these meetings, my 6-year-old, who loved his school, refused to go to school for 7 days because of masking.
My religious exemption was not recognized, and I was directed to the, in my opinion, very unethically written medical exemption form. This form that I ultimately decided I could not sign, even though we had visited a doctor and she agreed to write my child an exemption, was a required document in addition to a medical doctor's opinion that had to be completed to get his exemption approved. The form required parents to check a box stating that their children had been diagnosed with a physical or psychological disability that prevents him or her from wearing a mask. This is the only narrow medical exemption offered to an entire district. I would have also had to sign my name under a paragraph that states, I understand that choosing not to wear a facial covering places all, including student, at an increased risk for contracting COVID-19. I could not, in good conscience, sign a form stating that my tiny 6-year-old would be a risk to his entire building. I asked for a meeting to make an addendum to these specific pieces of the form since I had a doctor agree to write a medical exemption for my son, but I was not granted that meeting, so our story ended like this. We submitted 2 very explanatory religious exemptions that were not approved. We asked for a meeting to discuss our son's medical exemption, and the meeting was not granted. My son's absences were considered unauthorized after a certain number of days, as he struggled to try to wear a mask at school. He did go to school and try to wear a mask on 3 different days in this journey, as we wanted to be highly aware of what he wanted and needed in all of this. His teacher was no longer permitted by the school to send home his missed work or allow him to make up his missed assessments. There was no structured virtual option available to him. Lastly, when I called on the board to honor their own board policy for masking, available online for all of us to read, that very clearly stated an exception for children who have difficulty wearing masks, I was told that this was not a good enough argument because the board policies are just a guiding document that may not address every detail that arises. So I'd like to question this entire process yet again to say, if you have no accountability to your own board policies, how are we to trust you to make the exceedingly difficult decisions placed before you during this pandemic? It's hard to move forward in this process. It's hard to feel like you all have the best interests of the community in mind when there is seemingly no standard that we can hold you to in times of trouble, since your policies are just guiding documents. In the spirit of equity, community, informed consent, parental and student rights, and the rights of every family in your district to process COVID and medical mitigation strategies in a deeply personal way, I'm asking that you consider a revote on your current policy and at least expand your list of exemptions past the inequitable medical form you've offered. In closing, I recognize that I have neighbors who have suffered immense pain and loss because of COVID. Whether that pain includes physical tragedy or the mental anguish of living through such an intense time in history, I want to state that everyone's pain matters, even if we don't share the exact same beliefs. Everyone's voices should be heard and respected, and I hope we do our best as a community to come alongside people who think differently than we do and care about their suffering. Additionally, I want to implore you to make a plan for virtual learning so that children who feel conflicted for various reasons on either side of the masking issue have the ability to keep learning as they decide what is best for their specific family. Thank you.
For our last public voice this evening, and I believe it's Teresa Chapman.
Hello, all of you. Thank you again for coming up with something as opposed to not having anything. I will come closer, thank you. I've been a resident for 19 years. I've had 4 children graduate from Canal Winchester High School, and I have 5 grandchildren in the district as well. And I've been looking and watching lots of things over the years, and I love Canal Winchester. I love the town. I love the city. I love the community. I love the outreach to all the people. Lots of kids in need, and I've watched them personally as the community comes together to meet those needs, and that means everything to me, and that is my heart. I'm speaking from my voice of experience. Through this whole experience, I am a business owner, and I'm a very strong woman, and mother of 6 and grandmother of 9. And when it became a mandate for me, the person that I am changed. And I almost, from the time I was in 3rd grade, I wanted to be a hairstylist and a counselor. I never quite made it for counseling, but I talk to a lot of people every day. And I love what I do more than anything. And I have made wonderful relationships. I've made a lot of money. I've been able to support my household. And I've been able to do a lot of things for a lot of people by giving. And during that time, I almost gave up my career because the strong person that I was changed. And when I went back, I tried to follow those guidelines, but when I would wear a mask, my hands would shake and I could barely do my clients' hair. And while I would be doing their hair, I would have tears run down my eyes and I didn't even know why. I couldn't stand having anything in front of my face, and I've always been that way. I love my husband. You can kiss for a few minutes, and then my face is out of there. I have to have air. And to the people that would say, just wear a mask, was very, very difficult because I tried to. And I literally couldn't, and I ended up getting an exemption. But during that, it nearly cost me everything. I was forced out of my position. And I had been at that position for over 5 years. And in that time, they told me that I would have to go to another room. The person that was in with me was only in there for a short period of time with me and knew that I was not able to wear one medically. And yet I was told I would have to go back to her room and only be able to work a couple days a week. And I felt such an injustice. I had to go to another place, change my place of business, and it cost me a lot more money to be able to be private. So I have a different perspective of knowing what it's like to want to follow what is being asked of me, but I literally couldn't. And I've watched this now with my grandchildren. I went to my granddaughter's soccer game and it nearly broke my heart. On the weekend, she did great. Strong the whole time. And from the time she was a little girl, she could run literally from, like we were at Cedar Point, she would run to the parking lot to her cars. And she was in soccer and she was doing this and she was breathing in and out. And that was after being in school all day with a mask on and then trying to do a game that night. You are our representatives, and I've held positions where I've represented people. Please represent everyone. Although some people that don't have problems wearing a mask, it wouldn't affect them the same way. They can wear it and they feel comfortable with that. But there are some that don't. And I think about how that affected me, and anybody that would know me would have never guessed that I would have behaved like that. And once that time changed, I went back to being everything I was. And even my clients told me that at that time they didn't recognize me. And really, truly, I didn't recognize myself. And in that, please consider the children, because we're to help them and we're their voice. And I appreciate that you came up with something, but please consider that parents know what's best for their children. And I would hate to be responsible for anybody's health by the decisions that you make for others. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are actually going to move on to our executive report. So first up is our treasurer's report this evening.
We are solvent. So if you have any questions on the reports, I'd be happy to answer those. We're going to have the forecast next month, so we're going to dive in very deep to the financials. So any questions on the reports?
Nope.
No, sir.
I think we're set on that one. All right. So
I'll give you a state update, just one thing. State update, December is when they're going to release the new numbers formula. So we have nothing new from the state. It was supposed to be this month, and they backed it up to December. It was a pretty big undertaking for them to try to recreate the formula for each individual district. So I think it's taken more time than they expected. So December is when we'll know for sure the state, all the state details. We know about 85% of the details right now. Will be in the forecast next month.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Roberts? Okay, wonderful. Okay, moving on to our superintendent's report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Butler. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our viewers. Tonight, we're going to do the first recognition of the Student of the Quarter for the 2021-22 school year. So something positive, and hopefully, there they come. The building principals are coming on down. This recognition began 14 years ago as a way for the Board of Education to recognize students who demonstrate their best, be it academically or in terms of school citizenship. Many of our students are recognized in other ways at the individual buildings, and Student of the Quarter is just one more way for the board to say thank you to parents, students, and to the staff at each building for such excellent effort. We will begin tonight's presentations with the students from Indian Trail Elementary, and we will be presenting tonight is Mr. Eric Riddle. Mr. Riddle, we want to come up and read the names of your students?
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I will start with kindergarten. My two kindergarten students for Student of the Quarter were and Mark. For first grade, I had Mila Castle and Aiden Holman. And for second grade, Isla Weaver and Jason Apaya.
Thank you. And you had a little ceremony today for them, didn't you?
Yes, we did. We got to 2 grade levels, but we're unable to get to second grade. That'll be tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, and congratulations to them. Next up, presenting for Winchester Trail, Principal Mr. Max Lolithan.
Good evening. We'd like to recognize these students for Student of the Quarter in grades 3, Garrison Kenty from Mrs. Smithers' class, and Penelope Bondra from Mr. Lemieux's class. In 4th grade, Sophia Rodich from Mr. Liptrap's class, and Joseph Wetmore from Mrs. Denison's class. And in 5th grade, for Mrs. Thompson's class, Sophia Walsh, and Miss Morse's class, Archange Buzika. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lolithan. For the middle school, will be presented by Principal Mrs. Kelly Zivchek.
Congratulations to our Canal Winchester Middle School students of the quarter for quarter 1. From Team 6-1, congratulations to Andrew Lockhart and Claire Markoff. From Team 7-1, congratulations to Alex Pemberton and Olivia Ortiz. And Team 8-1, Derek Strasser and Cheyenne Lappin. Congratulations, Canal Winchester Middle School students of the quarter.
Excellent. Thank you, Mrs. Zivchek. And finally, presenting for the high school this evening is Principal Mrs. Amy Warren.
Thank you. We are very excited to congratulate our Canal Winchester High School students of the quarter. Our 9th graders are Andy Estebillo and Taj White. Our 10th graders, Harley Hanna and Kaina Karki. 11th graders, Zion Davis and Preston Bolin. And last but not least, our seniors, Dexter Mounts and Owen Walker. Congratulations.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. And each student will get a certificate of recognition from the board and myself, and then the buildings do something special for the kids too. So thank you very much, and congratulations to all the students and their parents and their teachers. Thank you, everyone. Next item I would like to talk about, we talked about this at the last board meeting, and this is our bus drivers. We're at a critical stage right now. We're down several bus drivers. I believe Dr. Bruning, if he's right there, we're about 36 bus drivers trying to run several routes, and we have many of the routes are doubled up. We're going to hire a bus driver tonight, possibly an aide, but we're also losing one in 2 weeks too. So we're going to go to 37, but back down to 36. If we lose another bus driver or two, it's going to be very challenging for us to get our kids to and from school within a timely manner. So we're looking at other options during the school year. Right now, we run a 2-tier bus system, and Dr. Bruning, correct me if I'm wrong, we do the high school, elementary in one route, and the middle, and the 2 high school and middle school in one route, and the 2 elementaries in one route. So 2 different routes, and it takes about 40 bus drivers to do that. There could be possibly that if our bus driver shortage continues, we might have to run 4 different routes, which means we might have different start times and end times for our school buildings to do that. It's not something we want to do, but I have to get the kids to school on time and not having them wait there in 45 minutes to an hour to pick them up and or drop them off. So I'm hopeful that we're not going to have a bus shortage, but if anyone knows anyone who is willing to drive a bus, either substitute or regular, please tell them to contact the school. We've increased our bus sub-rate pay to make it the first level of our bus drivers' pay. We're looking at other incentives. This is just not Canal Winchester issue. This is an issue across the state and across the country. Just can't find people to drive buses for us. And whether it's in competition with other logistics out there, Amazon, whoever else, other trucking companies. I'm not sure what it is. We're going to meet with our bus drivers tomorrow to figure out some things of how we could help out to make it more attractive for people and how, a better way to retain them. But we're at a critical level right now. And if we lose another bus driver or two, we're going to have to do something very different this school year, not next school year. I got to make sure that we get our kids to school on time and not waiting an hour. And if we have to possibly go to a 4-tier bus system where we start our schools earlier, some of them, and get some of the other schools out later. Because four systems, Dr. Bruni, we would need less drivers to complete those routes. And so hopefully we won't get there, but I just want to make the board aware, and I want to make our community aware that that could be something that we have to implement here if we lose another bus driver or two. Hopefully not. So just keep your fingers crossed. Questions for me or Dr. Bruning?
I know we don't want to have to make that change, but if we did, we were forced to, and knock on wood, hopefully we won't. What would be the time frame we'd be able to give our parents? Because I know that would adjust some schedules, so I was just curious.
Yeah, once
about
we
that.
get the time figured out, what that's going to look like, we're working on that right now. It's not something that would happen overnight.
Okay.
We might have to go a week or two with that, getting kids to and from school at a later time to give people the opportunity to adjust their schedules, because we know it's not easy. It's not easy for the parents, the daycare schedules, and all these other things that go along with it. I totally understand that. But I'm at a point right now trying to figure out what do we do.
Okay.
So anyone out there, we're begging, pleading, if you know someone who has a CDL license, where, Mike, we even train them, correct? We even go through a process and we'll pay for it. Call the schools, let us know, because we truly need help there.
Okay.
Absolutely need help. Questions, comments? Last thing we have is we actually did an air quality report. I have an air quality report for you. I gave you the executive order or the executive paper. A more detailed one is coming out here shortly. We used Lawhorn and Associates through Limbach, who did the air quality assessment for us. It was done in all 4 buildings, and the purpose of the assessment was to document potential occupant exposures to common air contaminants. In addition to visual survey of the relevant physical conditions, testing was performed to document the following: ventilation, comfort parameters, airborne particulate, total volatile organic compounds, and mold. The assessment was performed on October 12, 2021, throughout the day in all 4 buildings. And the report we got back was an excellent report. Our air quality in the buildings are actually better than what is recommended by these companies. The one that they looked at in particular was carbon dioxide. And they say that the average range, what they would say is good, is between 600 to 1,000, and most of our buildings were between 515 to 959 ppm. Those are basically their occupational exposure standards, and they monitor data suggests that our HVAC systems are providing adequate fresh air to control odors and IAQ contaminants based on occupancy rates on the date of sampling. So that is very good news for our school district. We talked about this before. We talked about ionization and all these other things that are out there, but with this report, it looks like how we're doing our HVAC and getting with the carbon dioxide and other stuff that comes with it, with the temperature, relative humidity, is coming back very positive for us. So our systems are doing what they're supposed to do. I'll have a more detailed report. They said they will send it out later this week, but you have the executive summary in front of you today.
I appreciate you looking at that, because that's important as we look at this season of mask, no mask, and where the kids are, and knowing that we have clean air in the buildings and we're doing the right thing. That's important. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that's all that I have for tonight. And as always, make it a great day or not. The choice is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Sautler. Okay, so we're going to move on to district reports. Are there any questions this evening about the district reports? Okay.
No.
Assuming that's a no?
No.
All right. All right, moving on. So we're going to move on to the consent agenda. So I'm going to need a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
This is, Hunt, it's on the.
Thank
board
you.
is on, sorry.
That's fine. We're going to start with number 1 is the minutes from the September board meeting, September 20th board meeting. Number 2 is a donation. It is a $15,000 donation from the Wood Foundation to the Canal Winchester Local School District. We would just like to say thank you for that donation. Number 3 is classified personnel. We have several items underneath this agenda item. Contract adjustment for a bus driver. We do have a retirement from Patty Brenner, who is our high school guidance secretary, and that is effective April 1st. So we want to wish her, we want to thank her for her many years of service to the district and just wish her luck on her retirement. And we have another resignation from Kristen Crumley as Winchester Trail paraprofessional. We have a leave of absence from Bart, I think it's Busey, but he's a bus driver, so let's call him Bart Bussey. But bus driver, he is taking an unpaid leave. He was a sub for us. We need drivers, as you've heard tonight. He already had this planned, this trip planned prior to us hiring him on, so he is requesting unpaid days. And then moving on to classified recommendations, we're filling several positions that were vacated due to resignations, transfers, et cetera. So you'll see bus drivers, bus aides, paraprofessionals, and then a clerical position. And moving on to number 4, we have an adjustment. We have an adjustment to a contract, and then we also are hiring Norman Robinson as middle school basketball coach. And number 5, as Mr. Sotler mentioned earlier, we're looking at the sub rates, we're asking you to approve them, and you'll see that we have increased the bus driver sub rate and the bus driver trip rate to the $18.93 an hour, which is that level 1 of the salary schedule. And number 6 is our new student activity charter for middle school band. Chad McGee will be the advisor of that club activity.
Awesome. All right, so any questions for Mrs. Hunt?
No.
You said, Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0. And we're going to move on to our action items. So the first action item is a CRA resolution for the 2021, and it's going to be, I'm going to mispronounce the name again, but it's Moloto Canal Point LLC. So I'm going to need a motion on the first action item,
So move.
and I'll second.
The next 2 resolutions have to do with this project, Malto Canal Point. This first one's for Building 1, the second one's for Building 2. Just to be clear, the board's voting on a school compensation agreement waiving the 45 days notice that's required from a higher revised code, and approving the exemption to be greater than 75%. This is our 3rd project in the last couple years that we've worked with the city on. This is a more lucrative deal from a financial standpoint in what the company is willing to provide the school district in lieu of the taxes that they would have had to pay. So the city is doing a nice job of ensuring that the school district is not losing 100% on the funds. And it is a non-school TIF, as all of these projects are, which means typically a TIF is 15, 30 years. At the end of the 15 years, the school district would begin picking up the taxes and would not be exempt at that point, and then your other local entities would be. So I'd recommend you approve the resolution as stated with the compensation agreement and the waiving of the 45 days with the community reinvestment area.
Lucas is here if there's any questions.
Would you like to, and Mr. Harris here representing the city, if we have any questions on the project.
I think, well, the one big question I did have is the number, because I think sometimes people don't realize, like, these tax abatements, I know some people have different opinions on it, but as a school district, this is basically land that's sitting there, so, you know, with us not picking up any additional students, we're picking up valuation, and obviously we're gonna pick up additional financial benefits for the school district, so I guess my only question would be, how much do we have an exact number for this?
Yeah, it ranges from 150,000. I mean, but we're looking at about an average 150,000. Starts off slower and then ramps up through the project as occupants are occupying the building.
Per year?
Per year, yes.
Thank you.
There's a combination of in the agreement where the company is paying a portion, and we're also receiving a portion of the income tax that the city receives on it. So it's a pretty fair financial agreement.
And then how long is this TIF going to be in place? Are they doing it? Is this a 15-year? I know he said 15, 30 years.
Yeah, so this is a community reinvestment area agreement, so it's a real estate tax exemption.
Can you?
Sorry. So it's a real estate tax exemption for 15 years.
Okay.
And so what they're asking for is 100% exemption during that 15-year period. What they're agreeing to do for each building is make a payment in lieu of taxes. So for the larger building, it would be $55,000 per year that would come to the school district. And for the smaller building, it'd be $45,000, so $100,000 in total. And then the school district will also receive 25% of the income taxes that are paid by the employees that will be working at the buildings. These are speculative industrial buildings, so there's no tenants identified yet that would go into those buildings, so we don't know what the specific payroll to be. But what they've committed to is creating 165 jobs, and the total payroll there would be $6,187,500, so it'd be no less than that. So that is their commitment. If they're not meeting those commitments, we monitor that each year through the Tax Incentive Review Council. And that's the reason that in the past we've done one agreement for multiple buildings on these projects, and we split that up into separate agreements here so we can do a better job with compliance and making sure they're complying with that. So the school district would receive no less than $70,937.50 from building one agreement and no less than $60,000 a year from the building two agreement during the term of the 15-year agreement.
Okay, wonderful. And like I said, this is valuation that the school district picks up, and essentially, I drive up and down Winchester Pike. Those are essentially land sitting there, and I couldn't tell you, and maybe you have the number, but I would imagine we weren't picking up that much valuation when it was just sitting there being undeveloped land.
Correct. It's currently property that's in the CAUV district, so it's receiving an exemption already for agricultural purposes.
Okay.
And so this would bring it on, and the land value is not exempt.
Okay.
And so we would anticipate in the land value increases there that the schools would receive for the two buildings approximately $65,000 a year in land value increase as well.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if anybody has any other questions. All right, well, you always do a really good job coming down here with the city, and then with the business council, you always added value there, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity. We really appreciate our partnership with the schools, and we want to make sure that any project that comes is a win for all of us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas.
Thanks, Lucas.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second, so if there's no other additional questions, Mr. Roberts, if you would, none?
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
And then moving on to action item number 2, which is the CRA resolution for the 2021, and that's going to be for the Molito Canal Point LLC. So again, just kind of, this is a second agreement that the city's brought to us this evening. So I'm going to need a motion on action item number 2.
Second.
And does anyone have any questions on this one? Okay, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. Okay, and we're going to move on to action item number 3, which is going to be the contract with Hellas Construction. Motion to approve a contract with Hellas Construction to renovate the synthetic turf and synthetic running track at Canal Winchester High School for a total of $171,015. $871,000.
So we got a discount.
Oh, man. That would
make a motion.
All right, wonderful. And I will second that motion.
Nick, I'm sure this will answer Angie's question.
Yes.
We went RFP.
Yes, we RFP'd. Mr. Sotler, myself, and Mr. Durbin, athletic director, met with 4 different companies, 2 each day. Pretty extensive interviews, pretty extensive presentations. And it was unanimous that every one of us felt that Hellas was the best company to represent Canal Winchester. I think any of them would have been solid to work with. I don't remember who we worked with 12 years ago, but they all have a kind of a different footprint in the industry they work with. We learned a lot about turf. We learned that there's not a lot of differences. They're all made in about the same spot. Dalton, Georgia is the hot spot for the carpet, because essentially we're laying carpet on a super large scale. You can tell with the presentations package that they provided. I think they represent a pretty good company for us to work with, and they were an all-inclusive to be able to do some other projects that we're leading down the way, such as bleachers and possible press box and those type of things. Cost is $871,000. If you remember, we did move $7.5 million in, I think, 2016, 2017 for the high school renovation project. It came under budget, so we've got roughly $600,000 left of that money. Once OFCC closes the project, we will be able to move that back into our permanent improvement funds, so which will cover a big chunk of this expense. And it just kind of makes sense that we set the money aside for the high school to continue to make the stadium safe. As you know, every year we have a test done on the field, and it's not just aesthetics of the wear and tear. It's about the safety, and there's a scale. If a kid was to fall from 5 feet and hit their head, could it cause critical injury? So there's a number on that, and ours is getting higher at certain parts of the field, and it's getting to the point where we just need to replace it to avoid any type of risk that moves forward with the field just wearing and tearing. So it's not just a matter of it looking good or looking bad. It's a matter of safety, and that's why you replace it. We learned that, I mean, different things with different injuries on the turf, the sand and all that stuff that's in it. So we tried to go with the one that was the best fit for the district. So, any other questions on the financial piece?
What's the timeline
of the
to
contract?
pay it off, or are we gonna?
It'll be
One
yeah.
lump sum?
We'll lump sum.
And the three other companies, Hellas, it was Mott's Group, Mommy Turf, and AstroTurf.
And from the presentation when Hellas came up here, and they had a bunch of different presentations, that one probably stuck out to me the most just because of the safety aspect. And we decided, well, the package, if we decided to approve it, was the package that provided more support that we knew was going to last. And obviously, as Mr. Roberts was saying, I didn't realize they go out and they test certain areas and you see what the safety level is. So, you know, we were getting close to that threshold where it would have been hard for us to play on it long term. And then this package, obviously, we added some more padding on there, so it would provide us more support and it would be a safer field for our students to play on. And obviously, a long-term, investment, because we know we're going to be on that field probably for a while, so we wanted to do it the right way. So that was one thing. I know there were some questions about it, but that's one of the reasons why I thought that this particular company impressed me the most.
Yeah, as Mr. Blatt alluded to, we went with a track to where you didn't have to tear it up every single time. You could build upon it, and there was additional savings down the line. So we did try to look ahead and make decisions that were so we could keep the track in great shape without always removing and going through the construction piece of a track. So when it does wear, we can just build on top of it, maintain our structure, and get longer life out of the track surface.
Wonderful.
And the benefit of the artificial surface is just less maintenance, and it can withstand more wear and tear of all the activities that we have to put on it.
Yeah, plus it's just not football. You got soccer, and now we have lacrosse, and you have marching band.
Right.
So it's a little bit of everything. It's a safety aspect. It's the wear and tear aspect, and it allows our kids more opportunity to perform on a field that's in much better shape.
I remember before they had that, when they had grass,
Yeah, it would become.
Mud by the.
Yeah, I mean,
early
if
October.
anybody ever plays on the grass, I mean,
Yeah.
as soon as you have one heavy rain and an untimely event on it, your field is pretty much lost for that season and maybe the next couple seasons afterward, which also creates health risks. And honestly, switching from grass to turf was where the big cost was, and we had donors and the boosters, thankfully, to take care of that piece of the project. So now the base is there, the drainage is in place. Now it's simply pulling up carpet, laying new carpet, and moving on. We have all the core structure of the project is already in place thanks to our boosters and our donors from 12 years ago.
Any other additional questions on
Just following up on the presenter's statement, as far as if any families would want to use some of that recycled material, you guys plan to follow up on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, before we get to that process in June, if there are people that would like a piece of the turf or a lot of the turf, all they gotta do is get a hold of me or Mr. Durbin at the high school, and, yeah, because it's easier for them just to give it away than to actual take it away themselves, so they rather give it away.
Okay, great.
I have a feeling that's going to be more popular than we think.
Yep.
on alumni? All right, wonderful. All right, any other additional questions for Mr. Roberts? If not, Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. And moving on to action item number 4, which is our insurance rates for the calendar year of 2022. Okay, so I'm going to need a motion on action item number 4.
So moved.
I'll second that one.
So the rates, if you pull that up, dental and vision are unchanged. We're really talking about health insurance. Family rate was $2,200, increasing to $2,400, and the single rate was $926, increasing to $1,040. Family percentage for the board 75% to 25%, and 85% versus 15%. A third-party actuary evaluates our claim data, our fixed costs. They recommend what the rates should be based on our claims history over the last 24 months. And the recommended for the family was slightly higher, and the single was about where we were. So I feel good with the rates to ensure that the plan is properly funded. We do have some work to do on education and really getting out there with wellness and those type of things. Claims cannot be a hope or a pray that they're not high. We need to be able to go out and educate our staff on preventive maintenance and those type of things, getting the screenings, getting the tests, getting the things that are necessary in the early stages to keep things from happening and to keep things from being a catastrophic event later. And I'm happy to see, I don't want to talk about the NFL, but I'm happy to see that their campaigning is about those things on where cancer screenings during the COVID period has kind of lapsed, and they're bringing that to the forefront, thankfully. And I think we need to start getting that back out to where people need to do the screenings, do the things, preventive care. All that stuff ties into these rates. We're self-funded, so the claims that are part of the plan in the school district are a direct correlation to the rates that are set. If we control the claims, then our rates can stay very minimal and with minimal increases. I think we've done a nice job over the 6 years I've been here. I think people understand a good decision from a bad decision when it comes to the health, but we need to kind of get back out there. We're going to look at all options beginning in January to see what we can do to buck the trend, because that's all we're really trying to do. We want to control what the trend is, and we want to see low increases over the next 5 years. and the 6 years I have been here, we've done a pretty good job. I think we're averaging probably 3.5% increase when the trend is 12. This is a 9.5, which is one of the highest ones we've had. Wasn't a good year from all kinds of different reasons with COVID and other catastrophic things. It was our highest high claim that we've had in a year. But at the same time, we're still maintaining the plan that we have, which we feel is very important at this time to make sure we have a very strong plan for our employees. So moving forward, these will be the rates for the calendar year 2021.
22.
Or 22, sorry. We're in 21 already. My gosh.
All right.
Any other questions on the funding rates?
I think we're good. So if there's no other questions, Mr. Roberts, call the roll.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to action item number 5, which is going to be the paving for the education center and the auxiliary gym. So I'm going to need a motion on action item number 5.
So move.
Second.
Okay, if you haven't noticed, we have the portable classrooms, the modulars that were back there for over 25 years are down. And we have an area out there that we need to do something with. We understand that parking at this education center, whether it's for board meetings, plays, concerts, whatever, or with the CWJRD is a premium. So we would like to pave that area now that is that was underneath the modulars, along with the pavement right around the auxiliary gym. And then to go around to the back end where that playground equipment is, we're going to get rid of the playground equipment. We're going to patch that and turn that into parking too. And eventually what we want to do is the parking on this side of the building, the south side of the building, will eventually become visitor parking, and then education staff will be able to park back there. So we actually have visitor parking for our parents that come to the education center, because it's hard to find a spot here. So we have a motion there not to exceed $175,000. I talked with Mr. Bridge today, and it sounds like Heiberger should be able to get most of it done this year. They have a date of November or something they use where they don't pave anymore, but it is a hazard back there right now, so that needs to get done as soon as possible, and it sounds like they'll be able to do it sometime before that November date. So that's going to happen here shortly.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions about action item number 5? Okay, wonderful.
And that comes out of the permanent improvement funds, as it says on there, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Sattler. All right, if there's no
Yeah,
other
it wasn't cost savings to get the modulars out. A company paid $1, but if we were to remove them, it would have cost us $50,000 plus probably to get the big modulars out, try to find a buyer, those type of things. So to get somebody to take them, refurbish and resell was a great deal for us, not to have to worry about it.
And those were vacant, correct? Because I know.
Yeah, those were vacant.
Yeah, I'm not sure who was that.
TLC,
Yeah, but they
the learning
moved on to
center
another
was there.
location, so it was
Yep.
just sitting there. So
Yep.
if we didn't do something about it, it was going to fall into disrepair. So it was time to do something. So just wait on that one. All right. So if there's no other questions, Mr. Roberts.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes. Okay, motion passes 4-0. And moving on to action item number 6, which is going to be payment in lieu of transportation. So I'm going to need a motion on action item number 6.
So move.
I will second that one.
All right, this is another routine item that we have. We have about 43 students, and basically it has been determined that it's impractical to provide transportation for these students, and so we're going to offer them a payment in lieu of transportation.
All right. I know that's something standard we do pretty much every year, so it's
Yeah.
something we have.
Correct.
If there are any other questions on that one? Okay, wonderful. Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 4-0. And we're going to move on to our organizational section. So we actually have, organization number 1 is going to be appointment of a board member. And I am delighted to recommend that we recommend Mr. Steve Donahue to the Board of Education as an appointment for a board membership. So I'm going to need a motion on organizational item number 1.
So moved.
Right?
Second.
And just so our folks know out there, this is for the remainder of this calendar year. So it'll be now through the end of December 31st, 2021. And Mr. Donahue will be replacing Mr. Yanati, who resigned on September 28th.
So, like Mr. Schottler said, this is a short-term vacancy, so we were looking for someone who could kind of fill in a pinch, and definitely was more of a neutral party, was going to come in and essentially help the school district, because this is obviously, this school year has been a little bit challenging. So we had to find someone that we thought would be a good fit, and Steve was one of the first people that popped in my mind as a former superintendent, administrator of the district, former city councilman, and just one of those people who's a pillar of the community. And I could go on, the Historical Society. There's multiple things that he's involved in the community, along with obviously being a grandparent and a parent of the district. So for someone for these next 2 months, for November and December, finding somebody that we could trust that would come in and do a great job. Steve Donahue was one of the first people that popped in my mind, and him being a UT Rocket definitely was on his resume too, so it helped out quite a bit. So with that being said, I'm saying this with a lot of enthusiasm that I think Steve is going to do a wonderful job for us in the short term, and we're very appreciative of his service and sitting through these long, exciting board meetings. I know it was a long one today, Mr. Donahue, but you stuck with us, and we really appreciate everything that you've stepped up and been willing to do. So I don't know if anybody else had anything they wanted to add to that.
I think it's great, Steve, wanting to help out, jump in and pick up your briefcase again for a couple months, and so we appreciate that. And this board meeting was a test to see if you're still back there after it's over, so.
You made it.
Thank you.
I echo their sentiments, and I appreciate all the experience and wealth of knowledge that you bring, and welcome to the board.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Let's vote on them first.
All right, so without it, if nobody has any other comments, Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Ms. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. So,
Mr. Donahue, would you like to come up here and take your oath, please?
You could stand there. I'll do most of the work. Mr. Donahue, do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as a member of the Board of Education of Canal Winchester Local School District, Franklin and Fairfield Counties, Ohio, to the best of your ability, in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I do.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Steve, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. Come on, have a seat.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you.
Looking forward to working with you.
Put your Herbie Hancock on
Good
that.
year, yeah.
All right, we'll give Mr. Donahue a moment.
Oh, he gets to vote on last.
Yeah, he does.
Richard, you want
Mr. Donahue?
Yeah.
He's grabbing his stuff.
You didn't bring your plaque?
All right, so moving on to section J, which is our discussion item. So we have a second reading of the 2022-2023 school calendar.
That is correct. We're not going to vote on this calendar tonight. We're still making some adjustments to this. One of the things we talked about earlier, and we even mentioned, is finding substitute teachers is very challenging this year, and it's probably going to be in the future. And one of the things, we have a lot of changes coming next year with some of our curriculums. We have a new math program at the elementary level, a new reading program, Letters, I think it's called, at the elementary level. We have Leader and Me training going on. I know the high school has a lot of portrait or graduate and other stuff going on with their whole redesign. We can only do so much professional development during the summertime with our staff, and it's getting more and more challenging to find substitutes for our teachers during the day. And the last thing we want to do is have 30 teachers pulled out for training in this new math program and or this letters program, but not have the subs to fill it in. Then kids are dispersed everywhere. So we added in 2 more professional development days during the school year. The start of the school year stays the same, August 22nd. We added a professional development day on October 13th. So that would be no school for kids, professional development for our teachers. And then December 22nd is no school for kids, professional development day. Everything else stays the same until the end of the calendar, where a kid's last day is now on that Friday, May 26th. So we made 2 changes really in between, and the third one just extending it 1 day. We're trying to be as creative as we can with how we offer this professional, but it's absolutely needed for what we have coming in the next school year at least. Teachers have to have that training. We're doing it up front, but they also need it throughout the year with the company coming in and working with their staff, and we have a lot going on. So we're not going to vote on it tonight, so we'll let it set for another month, and if everything looks good, we'll take a vote on it next month at the November meeting. Questions?
Right now.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. And then, moving on to section K, is there a need to enter into executive session this evening?
No, sir.
All right, with no executive session, then we're gonna move on to closing items. So, do we have any announcements?
Just to reiterate that the board passed a motion tonight to put the metric math policy in place. So we'll look at the numbers from August 3rd through, October 3rd through October 29th. If the district is below the 0.5% in total for the average for the month, we'll go to mass recommended starting November 1st. If it's above it, then we'll stay mass required.
Okay.
And that will start November 1st.
All right. Thank you very much.
We'll get more information out to our community in the next couple days.
Thank you, Mr. Sotler. So if there's no other questions for Mr. Sotler, I'm gonna need a motion to adjourn.
Move.
All right.
There you go.
Second.
All right. So, Mr. Roberts, if you would.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Metzler?
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Krueger?
Yes.
Ms. Howie?
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0, and we are adjourned at 10:06 p.m.